All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we have the roll call, please? Oh, Pledge of Allegiance. I will do that. Please join me. Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Vera Papa.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deaton. Here. Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Masalavic.
Here.
Councilmember Sestarsik. Here. All present.
Okay, can we have a city manager report, please?
Could I see if we could rearrange the agenda first?
Sure. We have a request to rearrange the agenda, so.
I asked the mayor if the control enthusiast on the council could take a crack at the agenda here. What I would like to do with the consensus of my colleagues is move the public comments to have 2 sessions of public comments. One right after the CIP so that we can get the CIP reports out so that the public can hear the CIP reports and then take their input. Then to have the general budget summary from last time, and then right after D, have public comments again, and then come back to the council for discussion. And that way we can get all of the public's comments before we do our final deliberation. At that point, what I am suggesting is that we lay out all of our ideas on the table and discuss them and the pros and the cons and just be really honest with each other on what we think about the cuts and the proposals, and then send it back to staff, ask them to compile the suggestions and evaluate the suggestions and put it on the agenda Monday night for final decisions. And then I would like to ask that the Sun newspaper put on their website the fact that if my colleagues are in agreement that we are going to do the final budget, because whatever we do is going to affect service, it's going to affect the community, and the community needs to know about it. And there's not very many from the community here tonight. So that's one request I have to change the agenda, and if my colleagues are in agreement with that, then I have a second.
Any comments?
No,
on that?
Good idea.
Second.
I agree. I guess we'll all vote.
There's really not a voting item on the agenda,
So
so I
it's-
understand the
it's a
discussion and consensus.
Okay, so we'll rearrange
Okay.
that.
Okay, so we'll have our first oral communication right after the CIP and the second one right after the general budget summary, and then we'll deliberate. Okay, then the next thing is Chief Acosta, our fire chief, is here tonight, and I need to ask the mayor how he wants to handle it, but I promised him, he and I are both supposed to be at an OCFA board meeting tonight where they're also doing the OCFA budget and doing a few other things that are really important. I obviously can't be there because my first duty is to the city of Seal Beach, but I would like to see if we could allow Robert to go first and give just a short, brief synopsis as one of our department heads, if you will, on the OCFA budget that they're looking at tonight, if that's
Sure,
all right.
yeah. Are you, Council, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's all. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
So after public comment then, is that what you're,
No, I think
So,
I would do it before
would
the
it
city
be-
manager.
before the city, okay.
Robin, what?
I was just going to make the recommendation, since the city manager's report is agendized, that City Manager Ingram could then call upon Robert Acosta to give a brief report.
Okay, perfect.
Right, thank you. City manager report.
Okay, at this time, I'll turn comments over to Chief Robert Acosta.
Thank you. I'm glad you know the rules, Robin. Council, Mayor, staff, thank you for giving me a few moments to talk before I head out to the OCFA. Just want to say a few words and get a few points out. The OCFA fully understands Seal Beach's need for fiscal relief. It's something that's talked about at our staff meetings, and I know we had Chief Zeller here at times with the ad hoc committee, and I'm sure she conveyed that to you. That's something that we're always looking for. It's something that we're striving for. And just like Councilman Deaton said, we're currently working towards passing our budget tonight. And that's as I speak right now, they're over there and they're doing exactly what we're doing here. And that's why I know Ellery would like to be there as well as myself, but unfortunately she can't. So I'll go over there and I'll report out as soon as I come back. But we also know as we work towards establishing our budget that even the littlest little tweaks can really affect the cities, and like especially the cash contract cities, and that's what we're trying to focus on and work towards. But with that being said, our budget's gone through our Budget and Finance Committee, it's gone through our Executive Committee, and it is being forwarded to our board tonight with the recommendation to approve. So we're anticipating it being approved tonight in its current form. But thank you for letting me be first up, Mr. Mayor, so I can get over there and be part of that and support them. As far as after the budget gets approved, Assistant Chief Zeller and myself will be here on June 11th to talk about the specifics of the budget and hopefully to see if we can find any form of relief, whether it's discussing the catch-up provision in the First Amendment or maybe with the vehicle replacement costs. Those are some items that we're looking at very specifically, and obviously we're going to get board direction and board approval, but there's some hope there, and that's what we're striving for. Obviously, Garden Grove potentially coming over, Irvine in their state of uncertainty right now is an issue, and that's going to affect ultimately the flexibility that we're going to have. But we're still pretty confident that we're going to be fiscally sound enough to work towards something. So, as for now, if I have any general questions, I can answer any general questions for you. But when Chief Zeller's here, she can get specific and get right down into the weeds for you. Is there any questions?
Any questions from the council?
Not yet.
Okay. Then I'll return on, I'll see you before that, but on June 11th, Chief Zeller will be here, and we'll have a full report out of our budget session, and we'll see. Keep your fingers crossed.
All right.
Thank you, Robert, for
Good
coming.
luck tonight.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor, with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Steve Miter, our Public Works Director, to present the 5-year capital improvement program. I will note he also has division managers in the audience, so at the point in time when the council's got specific and technical questions about some of the projects, his staff members can step forward as well. Steve?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, tonight's presentation is an overview of the capital 5-year program, which is, I believe, in front of everybody. So I will go through a few slides here just to give the overview. Again, we're going to go through the capital improvement program, and I would like to start with what we accomplished this year. Obviously, projects, highlighting projects that were completed and highlighting projects that will be carried over to next year to finish. Then we're going to go into the proposed 2018-19 capital improvement program, which is additional new projects. Then, of course, end on the unfunded capital projects list. And these are essentially a summary of the needs of projects that are not funded at this time. So I'm not going to go through all this, obviously, but this is our accomplishments, list of accomplishments. All these projects were completed this year, in this calendar year, or will be by June 30th. So we actually expended $2.7,038,000, and that's a round number, and that was the budgeted amount, and we ended up with about $2.1 million. Had some significant savings on a few projects, including the West End Pump Station improvements, and I want to thank Dave Bate and his leadership. He really did an excellent job in using our staff and really looking at what we were trying to accomplish, and we were able to do a lot of in-house work. We have a lot of very talented staff members that were able to do various things that the contractors were going to charge significant amount of money for. So we were able to really bring that project under budget, as you can see. So we'll move right on. So this one here is a slide of basically projects that are going to carry over next year. Now, I highlighted in red projects that will be going to the construction phase within the next 6 weeks. So these projects in red will be constructed over the summertime. Most of them will be finished by September. So we are moving forward on schedule. And this is, I'm not going to go through all the detail, but this is graphically what I just showed. This is what it looks like in a graph. So yellow is complete. Blue is, if it's all the way at the end, that means it's designed and ready to go. It's next up on deck, as it were, and it's going to be constructed this summer. The green is all the analysis we've been doing on the other projects, mostly water and sewer. It takes a lot of work to get these projects scoped out and get them ready to design. So we are continuing the projects that were scheduled this year. So funding sources, general fund, Tidelands, gas tax, OCTA measured M2, grants. Of course, we have the Sewer Enterprise Fund, Water Enterprise Fund, and then the Seal Beach Cable Foundation. So those are the funding sources. It's detailed in the individual project reports in the book. So Tidelands Fund, of course, the pier is moving forward on schedule. And then I wanted to also skip down to the Zero Tower safety improvements. That project is actually very important in that we have to bring the tower. Basically, it's not up to OSHA codes. Ladder is an old wood ladder. We want to make sure it's OSHA code safe. We also are going to retrofit and replace all the old electrical in there. And we are going to move forward and put a current standard communication system, so it will be up to date. Then this is the proposed building facilities. I'll just highlight the senior repairs project will be done this next 3 months or 4 months. And I'll just move on to the next one in sewer fund. So the sewer fund is going to propose basically, I'll highlight the 6th Street Alley sewer repair. That's also a water project as well. That particular sewer line is getting to the point where it's not reliable. We're going to replace it, and we're going to replace the water line and replace the alley at the same time. So then the pump station 35 upgrades, the other larger project we're moving forward on. And that project, just doing some general upgrades to make the station reliable, or just replacing some basically parts that are beyond their useful life. So we are moving forward, and these projects are well underway. They focus storm drain studies. And these are a list of street projects. Again, the ones that are down below are ones that we are carrying over. Well, the carryover projects are moving forward. The ones we do, basically the annual projects are proposed for 19, and we're moving forward on that program, or the various programs with the typical amounts shown. So water fund, you'll see that the focus this coming year is going to be mostly updating our water facilities and bringing the communications and control facilities up to current, what I would say current technology. Their technology is a little dated. They still are very reliable, but we're going to bring the current technology and make them a little more efficient to operate. So that's kind of the focus. And that's remaining. And of course, the Almond Avenue fire hydrant is related to the 405 widening project. So that's why that's up there. And it's replacement programs and annual. Of course, our water meter reading replacement program. We're going to move forward on a program for the next 5 years to update our water meters and make them more easily read. That will increase efficiency. Right now, their technologies, it's a little dated, so we're going to make sure that's as efficient as possible. So this is a real quick summary of the slides we just went through. 37 proposed projects for 2018-19, 23 previously approved projects, which is the carryover, and of course 14 new projects at $3.2 million. So summary, and we have those are all the various funding sources, and we are moving forward with about $19.4 million CIP over the next year. So unfunded project list, I won't go into the details, but it's in the back of the book. We obviously have a large storm drain unfunded need, and we have a building and facility unfunded need, and those are pretty much the two largest that are driving the cost. I have a set of slides for the vehicle replacement fund, or we can stop here and answer questions, or I can do it all at once. So it would be Mr. Baer.
I think we wanted to get the public comment, right? So is it a good time for that, or we want to wait?
I have, the next set of slides are vehicles. I can stop
just-
here or just get the vehicles.
Oh, you go
keep
through
going
them.
the vehicles, okay.
Go ahead.
So here's our vehicle replacement program, 2018-19. So what we're proposing is, what we're going to go through is the 2012 fleet replacement plan. It's going to give you then the policy guidelines, what we use to decide which vehicles should be replaced and which should not. Proposed summary for FY 18-19, and that's, we're adding 2 vehicles, and then we're replacing 5, then upfit all the vehicles. So getting the details. The 2012, just to kind of just take a step back and remind what we do to how we decide which vehicles do get replaced and which do not. This is a policy that was put in place in 2012. The major points are police units every 4 years or 100,000 miles, medium-duty trucks every 12 years or 80,000 miles, lifeguard consider every 5 years because of the extreme environment they have to work within those vehicles. So since 2012, 56 vehicles and equipment have been replaced. And again, we do this every year. We have as part of the policy, we have a point system that our chief mechanic goes through each car with a criteria and rates the cars. So that's another way to decide if a vehicle should be replaced or not. So that's how the policy was set up back in 2012. So this is this year's proposed replacement, and there's also 2 new vehicles, which is basically, when I say new, I mean we're adding to the fleet. So we have the 5, I think it was 4 or 5 replacement vehicles. They're up there. The new vehicle is a PD, and then we also are proposing for the sewer fund a sewer camera jet van, and that would be funded by the Sewer Enterprise Fund, and that's being driven by the requirement by the state that every 5 years our system must be videotaped and documented per state water quality control requirements. That cost is $300,000 every 5 years. So I've done a life cycle cost in the truck, and I worked real close with Dave. We have qualified staff, and by moving forward and putting our own program in place, it shows on a 15-year cycle we can save $67,000 a year. And I think the overall, I have an analysis, but I think the overall life cycle cost was in the $300,000 range over 15 years of savings, or 383, I believe it was. So we're proposing a truck versus contracting. We feel it's more efficient, and there's also some intangible benefits. This truck can also be used in our storm drain if we wanted to make sure we feel there might be a potential blockage, which we did find. We actually hired somebody and we found a blockage. We did video our storm drains as well and did find a blockage. So it was over near Coast Highway and on Seal Beach Boulevard, and it turns out one of the catch basins filters kind of got in there, and we caught it, and it was fine. But that's why these trucks are very valuable. It's very hard to bring them on site on call. These contractors are very busy because every city, every sewer system has under the same requirements. So we feel this is a more efficient way. It'll save money, and obviously there's a capital cost up front, but that's why we are proposing this particular item. So that's just a kind of a summary. Vehicle replacement fund, 320. That's how much money will be funded, pulled from that to fund the proposed replacement / new, and then of course sewer enterprise fund will fund the $200,000 truck. So overall, $520,000 for vehicles this year is proposed, and that concludes both presentations.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions from the council, then we can take some questions from the public. Sure. Ellie, you have a question?
Steve, as what you just went through is that there are $3.2 million in new projects. Can you tell me how much of that is coming out of the general fund or out of reserves?
see, I don't have that too. Well, let's go back up to, oh, wait.
And I'd like to say, you said that our streets are at 85%. And the
that's
reason
true.
is because we have poured so much money into our streets. They really needed it, and I don't think anybody wants to slide backwards on that. And we have used a lot of our reserve money in order to do that. So I'm just curious at this point, because I'm feeling like we need to start putting money into savings rather than taking it out of savings.
Right.
How much are we still having to pull out of savings to do our CIP?
Let's see. The general fund typically, obviously, most of the projects moving forward are from the enterprise funds, and you'll see that. In general talking, local streets are the hardest to fund, and sidewalks, because the gas tax. Mike, would you, do you have the actual numbers? But usually it's the streets that are general fund related. Oh. Let's see. It's $6 million.
6 million of
Little over
3.2?
Little over 6. So.
Okay.
Oh, that's including the pool. So it's,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
what, it's
All
a
right.
pool reserve. So
Okay,
that's
thank
in
you.
there.
All right, so then it's safe to say that when you talk about sewers, storm drains, water projects, that's all coming out of enterprise funds, grants, or are we still doing our sewer loan program?
No, we're not doing the sewer loan at this point.
Okay, so that then, but anything like our facilities repairs, our street repairs, and those things are coming out of reserves?
The streets, actually the facilities would be essentially general fund subsidized, and storm drains are general fund. That's
And
not a
storm
revenue.
drains, okay.
Yeah, storm drains are not revenue based.
So streets, storm drains, and buildings and facilities?
Yeah, that's the main driver of the cost.
Okay, so thank you. I think that helps because people keep asking what's happened to our savings. Well, we can't spend it and save it too, and our streets needed a lot of work and our storm drains needed a lot of work. So thank you. That's all I have.
Shelley, you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Sandra, any questions?
Didn't we start a water meter replacement program a year or two ago to upgrade the water meters?
The funding is there. We have not, we're just now moving forward on we do replace meters as needed, but I want to move forward because meters are constantly breaking, but I would like to move forward with some more aggressive technology as well. So we are revamping that program, but there is a program in place now.
All right. I see that the sewer van, I'll just call it.
Yeah, that's
for
fine.
lack of better terminology, is what, 300?
It's 200,000.
200,000. What are we spending now with leasing that, or having a private contractor come in?
A private contractor at this point is going to cost, starting next year, we're entering the first year of 5 years. So the private contractor is estimated at about $60,000 per year. So if you look at a 5-year cycle, there's some benefits. Of course, there's an upfront cost, but there's sufficient funds to fund the truck as well.
Thomas?
On the vehicle replacement fund, or the only thing that concerns me is the 100,000 miles. If the vehicle's only like a year old and it's over 100,000, would it potentially be replaced?
I'm going to defer that to Mike. He works very closely on this policy.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, if a vehicle was 1 year old and it had 100,000 miles, we would evaluate it. That's a very short duration for a vehicle to travel 100,000 miles. So we would rate it, evaluate it, take a look at it, and it probably not the likelihood of 1 year to have 100,000 miles, but we would look at it and evaluate it individually.
Would you find out where it was being driven to?
Yes, that would be a good qualifier.
I guess I drive a vehicle for 250,000 miles, and it's fine. And I'm just wondering, yeah, I know, but have we looked at maybe extending that to like 150,000 or?
Yeah, I mean, if the vehicle didn't have a lot of repair work, if it wasn't in the maintenance yard, if it wasn't sitting waiting for parts, that's something that we would individually rate. Because of the rating system, it looks at the maintenance history, the years, the number of mileage, and the life of the vehicle. So that would probably rate really low since it's only a 1-year-old vehicle.
Okay, thanks.
Do you ever borrow cars from like other agencies like OCSD or Sanitation District or?
Not necessarily those vehicles, but we do get loaner vehicles from OCTA, which is a step-down vehicle that we do incorporate into our senior transportation. So that's probably the only vehicle that we do take in.
Okay. All right. Going back to the slide that showed all the status of major CIP projects, can you go back to that little graph there? I know you had a lot of projects and you kind of went over them fairly quickly, but. Yeah, that one. That one. So can you just go over the yellow and the blue and the green and where we're at with?
Sure. The ones in yellow, that is color code for construction.
Okay.
So there's, just to really explain the idea of this graph, projects start out with, you have to kind of scope it and plan it. That actually is quite a bit of work. And in the green phase, you're working with your operators, you're working with stakeholders in developing a project. So then we go into design, that's the blue. And then, of course, the yellow is construction. So what I do is, this is just kind of an at glance. It's a snapshot of where we are. I've got 23 projects. They're all coming down a conveyor belt. It's kind of like you're like an assembly line. You don't want everything at the same time. It's more efficient to do it this way. So you'll scale it out over the year. That's a snapshot of June 30th. So that's my projection is, if it's all the way over, there's a 0 to 100%. So if it's at the 100% mark, it's done, or it will be done by the 30th.
By the 30th, okay.
So then the blue, and what I do, the way it goes from engine, the way I consider going from blue to yellow, is once it's advertised for construction, it gets moved up to yellow. So the project will actually move up. So right now, we have quite a few, and I didn't put this in, I should have probably put them in red, but there, you'll see under design, if it's all the way over, that means it's ready for construction, and we are lined up in the next 6 weeks to kick all these projects out the door.
Okay.
And that's what we're scheduling. A lot of them will be advertised before the end of this year.
So you have about 6 projects ready to go?
Yep. Yeah, we're ready.
So on 3 slides past that,
Sure.
you have building and facility projects proposed. Are those on the list too?
Uh-oh.
Are they part of the list?
Why is this not working?
Next. You got 2 more after that.
I'm sorry. I'm having a malfunction.
That's all right. Yeah, those projects. So are those on the list, or how does that correlate with the other graph?
I didn't put every single project on,
Okay.
for example, because I wanted to make it, if it gets too big, it gets too paid. I was trying to get the major projects that have the most impact to the community. For example, County 800 megahertz agreement, that really shouldn't be there. The tennis center roof repair is these are all proposed projects. Oh, I see your question. I'm going to redo this.
Okay.
At the end of the year. I'm going to put a new one together. A lot of those yellows are dropping off, so now I start out with a lot of blue, a lot of green, and then they slowly work their way up.
So some of these are in the works too, even though they're not on the list, then, is that what you're saying, or?
Well, no, these are proposed.
Proposed.
So these are actually
So they're not in
proposed.
any phase?
They're going to be in the planning design
Planning
phase
design.
starting in July.
Okay.
So we first have to kind of scope it out. So,
That's in green. Well, that's the first phase, I guess, green. All right, I was just kind of curious.
See, and that's a good point. The poll is a long-term project, so it's obviously a carryover, but we're in environmental, we're in study phase
Right,
right
now
now.
we've been studying it.
But that's got some life left in it, so I could put that there, but I didn't. So, trying to keep it as readable as possible, so.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one for the chief. Chief Miller, could you tell me, please, tell us, please, why 100,000 miles on the police cars?
Well, I would hope that Councilman Moore's vehicle, driving his vehicle, is different than the way we drive our vehicles. Otherwise, you might get a ticket.
How come you guys get all the fun?
Yeah, so 100,000 on our cars is considerably worn at that point. That's kind of the target for us. And obviously, we work with Michael and on the wear and tear on the vehicle. And typically, I think the number they found was 100,000 is usually the replacement time for our vehicles. Okay. And we don't put them on. It usually takes 3 to 4 years before that happens. Thank you.
All right. I think that's all the council has at this time. I think there's some more coming, but why don't we open it to public comment? Can we do that? The oral communication? On the CIP? Yeah. All right. So at this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone and state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution.
Good evening, Robert Holberg. I do have some questions. I did submit some questions, and remarkably, they're only one page, and I think that's testimony to a good project, a good presentation as well. Last year at this time, the total amount of proposed projects was $26 million. That compares to about $19 million now. And one of you asked Mr. Miter, 26 million is really sort of, we know that's kind of pie in the sky. How much do you think you'll actually accomplish? And the answer was 4 million. And I see now that the estimate now is for 2.7 million actually done, which is not too far off from the 4 million. Now we have a 19 million proposal. Of course, that includes the 4.8 million for the swimming pool. But I would like to ask Mr. Miter again, using his professional judgment, what do you think we actually will get done reasonably? Because you can't do all that 19 million. I mean, the streets will all be torn up. I mean, and it includes the swimming pool as well. So that's my first question. On the vehicle replacement fund, in the budget there is a fund summary which gives you a number, and again every year we generally ask staff at the end of this year how much cash will actually be in that fund, because that number is not just cash, it's also hard assets. It's the value of the vehicles and equipment that we previously purchased. And so I would like to know, as of June 30th, 2018, what's our best estimate for the cash remaining in the vehicle replacement fund. We do have a proposal to drain that by 3/20 next year. On page 10 of the CIP, I see that we're not funding street tree planting this year. We typically do 20,000, and I see the 20,000 is programmed for the future years. But I would like to see, I don't see Mr. Caviola, Mr. Tree Man here tonight, but I'm sure he would ask what his staff's thinking about that 20,000 that we don't have programmed. I had one question regarding water project from last year. That was WT 1702, which was the Westminster Avenue water main replacement project. That was on the list for this fiscal year. It's funded at $2.9 million, and I was wondering what the status of that project was It's not completed, and I don't know, I had trouble. Maybe it's in the small print, and I'm sorry if I didn't read the small print. That was a big project, and I don't see it. It wasn't rolled over, so it's either finished or it's done, or we decided not to do it. Something, and that's almost $3 million. Some of this overlaps with the budget, but it's related to capital improvements, and that's the question I had is regarding the water capital fund. We have almost $8 million proposed for that capital fund, as well as there's a $1.8 million transfer from the water capital fund into the water operations fund. So there's about a $9.8 million hit planned. And again, on page 140 of the budget, there's an ending fund balance as of the end of next month, about $17 million. So it looks like there's enough money to cover a $9.8 million hit. But again, that $17 million is not just cash. It's also the value of the pipes and other equipment. So my question is, of the $17 million in cash and assets that will be in that fund at the end of next month, how much cash do we have in the water in the water capital fund? And I have the same question regarding the sewer capital fund. If you look on page 146 of the budget, it has an ending balance at end of June this year of $25 million. Sounds very good, but how much of that is cash? And then my last question is a question I asked last year, and that is when we're going to have the boat party. Okay, this is the rescue boat, which is a approximately $535,000 project, and I would like an update on when that boat is going to be launched and when we're going to have a boat party. Thank you.
Okay. Since this is a budget workshop, I think it's fair that you can maybe address some of those questions.
Sure. As I showed on my slide, as I showed on the slide that projects in progress, there's about $500,000 to $600,000 of projects that will be going out to bid within about 6 weeks. So that essentially will increase the overall summary to about what we get about 3.3, 3.4, and also I think I want to add that the pool in that total, we're using encumbrance as kind of a measuring stick, and which means the pool is in there, and of course the pool is on a much longer schedule than this 1 year, and also Beverly Manor. Beverly Manor, we're still looking at, that's got $5.2 million put aside, and that is not, that is, excuse me.
You can't leave, Steve. Sorry. Nice try.
The timing was perfect. So I just want to basically emphasize that the Beverly Manor was $5.2 million. We've been working all year on value engineering.
So last year you gave an estimate of 26, but you came down and said around $4 million. So
right.
This year, what are you?
Well, it's the projects are set up as encumbrances, and some of them are 2 or 3 years. Right. So when you see an average there, so I'm thinking, based on where we're at, we will hit. The projects will be started. So if you put $5 million into a project, you start the first year, and you might spend the design dollars.
Right.
Then the next year you'll spend the construction dollars. So it's actually you're looking at cash flow versus encumbrance at that point. So what you're seeing up there is essentially a cash flow versus encumbrance model. So cash flow wise, $5 million, we'll hit the $5 million.
So 4 to 5. A little bit more than this past fiscal year.
Right.
Okay. How about some of the other questions?
Sure.
Did you write? I wrote some of them down.
Oh, please.
But if you recall what Mr. Goldberg was talking about.
On the
vehicle replacement fund, June 30th, cash remaining. Question is there any information on that? Tree planting.
Tree planting. Well,
water.
I was going to jump in. Excuse me on the cash. We don't have those numbers with us tonight, so if the council would like to get that information, we'll follow up. But we'd have to go back and run some reports and calculate the pluses and minuses and then come up with an estimate. It's not something that's readily available.
Okay. Do you have a preference on that? Anyone? The cash, getting the cash balances.
When will those come out, Vicki? They come out at some point anyway.
Well, the cash balances never really come out. It's the fund balances that come out. So that's why we'd have to go run some reports, and at a point in time, we can tell you what the expected cash balance is. But even if on June 30, we're not going to be able to tell you because we continue to pay through August 15th. So when we publish the CAFA, that's when we know what the cash balances are. But we can run a report at any point in time and identify what the cash balance is right now at this point in time.
Okay, well, I'm fine with waiting for the CAFR.
Yeah, okay. I see we have Tim here for the tree planting session of
Yeah, as you can see in the budget, it wasn't programmed this year, but it was programmed for future years, with the reason being during the period that we were kind of short-staffed. We've now had an arborist on board with us for about 8 months, so he's actually been catching up from past years when we were short-staffed and couldn't keep up. So we still do have a pretty good amount in the encumbered from this current fiscal year, and actually still some from the previous fiscal year, that what we'd like to do is use the year as a catch-up year, and being in the situation we were in, we thought it was the most responsible thing for us to do. We still will be putting a lot of trees in the ground this year. We've actually been finding, too, is with the arborists on board, we've been getting a better rate on the trees than we were previously. So we're actually able to do it more efficiently, and we're getting more trees for that $20,000 than we had been previously. And then also, in the future, we do have a project plan for Gum Grove that we'll be bringing forward to you, too, which wouldn't be as to the street tree, but it would still be putting trees in the city.
And the tree committee's in the loop on all that stuff?
We were going to meet with the tree committee actually next month. It's, I think, in a week. So.
All right. How about the water main replacement?
Yeah, last year, that project was in the list, and I went through and looked at all our projects. And what I determined based on thorough evaluation in our records, a cost, and basically looking at the cost of the project, there's really not, at this point, the pipe has a lot of, I believe, has a lot of life left in it versus on the records, the maintenance records, and that was a very pricey project, and I feel it can be postponed for at least 5 more years and still maintain the reliability that we expect. So as a cost-saving measure, I decided to postpone that project for at least 5 years.
Okay. And last but not least, the boat party?
Well, I don't have money in my budget for a party, so maybe we can all go to Dr. Goldberg's for that. But the latest schedule on the boat completion is mid to end of July. Now, I understand that may be difficult after we've seen about 7 different completion dates, but I think we're gonna nail it down by the end of July and have a boat.
Okay, good. All right, we still have the open oral communication. If anybody else has anything to say at this time? Seeing none, guess we'll move to the next item.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'm going to turn this portion of the presentation over to our Finance Director, Vicki Beatley. She'll give a very brief summary from our general fund meeting on Tuesday night, followed by some follow-up discussion items that were brought forward by several of our departments as part of their presentations. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram. The PowerPoint master is assisting with setting up the next presentation. Thank you very much. So the first slide, as is typical, I just remind the council where we are this year. There happens to be an estimated deficit that remains. For the projection here, we haven't changed anything. So this is the number that you saw Tuesday night. But I did want to remind you that there's about a $46,000 additional expenditure from the Westcom budget that was adopted at the meeting last week.
Vicki, is your mic working?
Yeah.
He's not getting it on TV.
It's there. I mean, it's on. The blue light's on. Maybe we got these at Kmart and we need to.
For the blue light special.
Blue light special. There you go. Now I know how old some of you are.
Wait a minute.
Including me. So I'm not sure why. Okay, well, I'll just sit here and talk like this. Lift it up a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move right along. So then also, this is just a projection of where the estimated general fund balance would finish up at the end of 2018, 2019, if every expenditure came in exactly as we anticipated and every revenue came in exactly as we anticipated. There's some follow-up items that would like to discuss for a few minutes, but before I jump into that, at the workshop on Tuesday night, there was two different individuals who talked about CalPERS and the actuarial and the mortality tables. And one of them in particular said that the mortality tables were from 1959. And while the statement was correct, the statement is not exactly right for the next measurement period. And what I mean by that is over the last couple of years, PERS has been working on changing amortization, the discount rate, and changing the mortality table that they're using. So with the valuation that's going to be available in July of this year, and remember, PERS is always 2 years behind. So with the valuation that we're expecting, those mortality tables have been updated, and I will probably early next week go ahead and email Mr. Bennett so that he can share the information. I love it that somebody in the city is, excuse the term, so wonky that they're spending time looking at this. And given all the numbers and the idea that, you know, there's a lot of information from CalPERS that we rely on, if we actually have somebody in the city who's got mad math skills that wants to spend time and ensure that Seal Beach is paying their fair share, I happily would love to be able to have somebody do that because it can only benefit us if there is actually something wrong. So I will share that information with Mr. Bennett so he can get it out to the young man that was with him that night. From the perspective of the position allocation, you know, one of the things that we sort of glossed over last Tuesday was the idea that one of the cuts that we've made has to do in particular with staffing. And so what I wanted to just talk about for a moment is the position allocation and the changes that we are leaving in the budget. And by changes, I mean unfunded positions. So based upon the projection that we have about 12.5 vacant positions right now. And this is in the document, the budget document. And we have an unfunded position for the Director of Community Development. In 17-18, we proposed that to you. When we first put the budget together, we added that position back in. And through a judgment on the part of the city manager, the position now remains unfunded. There's also an executive assistant position that's unfunded in the Public Works yard, and a maintenance services supervisor that is unfunded in the Public Works yard. And of course, you know, the concern about leaving these positions unfunded is that we're doing the best that we can to get the work done that the residents and the council want us to get done. But our concern is that there's going to be an expectation now that we don't need these positions. And the reality is we need the positions. We're just making do with what we have. And I think something else that's really important is Crystal mentioned in her presentation on Tuesday that we have a building official 1 day a week. 1 day a week. You know, that's what we can afford. That's what we're trying to do. So we're doing all these things that we can to get by, and I think it's important for us to just be mindful of the unfortunate choices that we've been having to make. The other thing I would like to highlight is just overall the department review. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the departments and some of the discussion items, but what I think is very important for us to know, and it kind of goes back to the zero-based budget, is when we put this budget together, as it's proposed right now, our total salaries and M&O costs are over $2 million less than they were last year. So we, as staff, have done a significant amount of work to ensure that even though we have a $500,000 deficit right now, we're doing the best we can to make sure that what's in the budget is what we need, positions aside, and that everything in our power to control, we have already looked at. There's going to be some things that will happen when we adopt this budget. Remember, it basically is only balanced the day we adopt it, and then after that, it's just sort of a roadmap. So I did want to highlight those measures that staff has already taken into consideration. And then I have next just a follow-up for, the council comment recommendations, but what I'd like to do is go ahead and just remind everybody what we sort of have on the table for discussions, at least from the presentations that were heard on Tuesday night. From the city manager's office, we are asking the council to make a determination about the items that are listed here. I would like to clarify, however, that it would not be the recommendation of staff to eliminate the League of California Cities. That is critical, not only to the city manager's division, but there's a fiscal officer division, there's a public works division, there's every one of the departments in the city takes advantage of the League of California Cities membership as well as the council. So just want to clarify that. Yet it's an option, it's funded. It would not be our recommendation to eliminate the league funding. The Association of California Cities is just something that we want to have a discussion, want you to have a discussion about, not we, but you to have a discussion about. And of course, we have left the council discretionary in the budget right now. So that's something for consideration later. From the police department, again, this is not going to be an easy discussion, but it's definitely something we need to think about, and that's the amount of money that the city spends on in-kind services to ensure that everybody in the city has a great time, but it does come with a cost, a pretty significant cost. And I know that Chief Miller has some more information about that if we need to take a deeper dive into that, but that's a discussion that we'd like to have the council have. The senior transportation, there is, at the moment, some new slides in here, and I think the council asked Michael Ho if he could provide some additional information. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and hand the pointer over to him so that he can talk about the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Vicki. So we talked about on Tuesday night an opportunity or something that we could look into, a budget proposal. And one of the ideas was senior transportation. The senior transportation is a long and love-endeared program that we have and we offer for our seniors here in Seal Beach. And we wanted to put together an overview of what we can do and what we can cut, or just look at the possibility of maybe modifying the existing senior transportation. So we talked about Tuesday night was the existing services that senior transportation offers. It's the Dial-A-Ride program, the nutrition shopper shuttle, and also the Thursday shopper shuttle. With these three combined programs, it comes out to about $210,000 annually. Of the $210,000, we get about $90,000 from OCTA and AQMD combined. So the city puts in about $120,000 of general fund just for this program. So there are three options that we talked about on Tuesday night. The first option is to reduce the operating hours, bringing it down to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., as opposed to 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Second option would be eliminating the shopper shuttle. That's a single ride, single shuttle, and that operates from 8 to 4:30, Thursdays only. And that would save about $20,000 annually. And the last option, which is the most drastic, annual savings about $120,000, That would eliminate the Dial-A-Ride and the Shopper Shuttle. That would only provide the nutrition program. So that picks up the seniors, takes them to the congregate meal program, and brings them back home. Since that presentation, we looked at some additional numbers. Oh, thank you. Oh. Okay. The City Council asked for additional information, which was great because it gave us an opportunity to study the performance of the senior transportation. So we broke down this chart into 3 programs. The first one is the Dial-A-Ride program. These numbers are based upon actual numbers from fiscal year 16-17, all of last year. So the entire trips for the fiscal year 16-17, we had over 9,000 riders just for the Dial-A-Ride program. If we break that down on a monthly average, that's about 759 seniors. On a daily average, that's about 38. It's a very high-use program. It's something that's been around for about since 2007, so almost 10 years. And the annual cost of that program alone is about $100,000. The next program is the Senior Meals, and that's the program that we had since day one, since inception. We had over 13,000 riders for the entire year, a little over 1,000 on a monthly basis, and over 50 on a daily average. So that's one of the highest used programs that we have. Great program. Basically takes the senior from their home to our senior center and brings them back for the congregate meal program. And last is a newer program that we started, which is the Thursday Shopper Shuttle. This ridership, even though it looks low on an annual basis, but if you break it down on a daily average, it comes out to about 26 riders per day. And that program alone is about $20,000. So based upon all 3 programs, we have almost over 23,000 ridership for the entire fiscal year. So our senior transportation is very popular. It's very used. It's heavily used and based and well-known in the city. So this is a presentation. I'm going to move on really quickly about our senior transportation. The Office of Aging, which is the county-run program that offers transportation to seniors in Orange County. They call this program the Senior Non-Emergency Medical Transportation. This is, in fact, a similar program like our Dial-A-Ride program. The City of Seal Beach qualifies for this program, so it's any senior over 60 going to a non-emergency medical trip that can qualify for this program. And you can have up to a ridership appointment up to 5 days in advance, 15-mile limit from their residence. They can't go to San Diego or they can't go to the Fairplex, but they can go within 10 miles outside of OC. So they can go to Long Beach Hospital as well. You can have up to 16 one-way trips. There could be a possibility of more if they qualify. The requirement is the $2 donation fee. They call it a donation, but it's per trip. So if they were to come round trip, it would be a $4 donation fee. Care attendants are free. They can ride along with the system. And the best part of it is it's offered earlier and later than our program, an additional 1 extra day, which is Monday through Saturday. Our program is only Monday through Friday. And this program is funded through the state, which trickles down to the county, and the county is administered through OCTA. The contractor is called Abrazar. Abrazar is a contractor through the county that they hire directly for this senior non-emergency medical program. Questions and contact, seniors, Seal Beach seniors can call Abrazar directly for an application. They can visit the website above and receive an application and qualify for this program. And this is something that I want to present just in lieu of option 3, which I'll go back, which is eliminating the Dial-A-Ride program and the Thursday Shopper Shuttle, which is an annual savings of $120,000 general fund. That kind of concludes a little bit of summary of senior transportation.
I had a question. Do we have any kind of feeling for what's the availability on this? I mean, are they impacted? Do we know, I mean, would they be able to pick up?
I believe they're not as impacted as our system because there's not many Seal Beach residents registered under Abrazar. They do have plenty of vehicles. Their fleet is a lot larger than Keolis, which is our current provider. Abrazar is a countywide program. They have plenty of fleet buses in their fleet. They have specialized vehicles. They have taxi programs. They have larger buses. So they have a wide range of vehicles available.
Can they handle wheelchairs or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do they have an outreach program that will let people know to sign up for that program? Because if we eliminate the other one?
They do not. There's no outreach program. We
could do that.
We can, as a city, we can advertise on our website.
I've used both programs, okay, so it's only just what I've had to do. I have family members, one wheelchair bound and one not wheelchair bound. Tried the Dial-A-Ride, could never get a ride out of there, tried it several times. So my question on that is, what are the parameters on our Dial-A-Ride? Are they for medical appointments, or are they to go visit Aunt Susie, or what are the parameters on the Dial-A-Ride?
For our Seal Beach?
Our Seal Beach Dial-A-Ride.
Our Seal Beach Dial-A-Ride, any location in Seal Beach.
Okay.
Any medical outside the city up to 3 miles.
Okay. Do we know of those 9,000, I think it was, rides, how many of those are repeat riders rather than individual riders?
From the database that we have, which is a monthly report from Keolis, it doesn't break it down between multiple riders, or it's based upon trips. So the report that we get, it tells us how many trips that vehicle makes, and in total it's about a little over 9,000.
So we don't know if it's the same person riding 9,000 times or if it's 9,000 people.
Correct.
All right. The other thing I wanted to say is we've used the OCTA system as well. I think, Sandra, the way I found out about it was I think we got it through caregivers or nurses or something, and it was excellent. We called up, got scheduled, they came out. They even, one of the things we wanted to do was to send our family member to swimming lessons for physical therapy. And the issue was that OCTA would take them over to Cal State Long Beach, and then they taught us how to then go ahead and apply for the LA County program, which LA also has one. You can transfer onto the onto the Los Angeles County bus and go anywhere in the county of LA. So not only does it get you in the county of Orange, it also, they have ways that you can move among the counties as well, because there are more counties than just Orange that have this. They were on time. They were new buses. They rolled the wheelchair in, they secured the wheelchair, and the attendant went, and off they went to the swim lesson. So I've had experience with both programs, and I think our program is redundant. So do we lose any M2 money if we use their program?
No.
So we're just giving up a program to fund our own program instead of using the county's program.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a question. Was that the Access program she's talking about?
Yes, that is the Access program.
That doesn't apply to everyone.
No,
It's the same program but different. It's the same program, but that Access, they just send a different bus out and you have to qualify differently.
Right. The qualifications are a little more,
Not under Access, no.
So are you done?
Yeah.
Tom?
How many, do we know the Dial-A-Ride, how many are medical or not?
They do break it down between medical, nutrition, and personal care, which is for personal reasons. But yes, it does have that. I didn't break that down into this table as more of a generic, robust kind of calculation. But yes, they do provide that. We can provide that type of calculation or breakdown.
And our Dial-A-Ride will allow them to go out to dinner in Seal Beach or to shop in Seal Beach as well.
Yes, our program does run until 4:30, so it would be a very early dinner. Yes,
lunch. So this would have potentially a negative economic effect if our seniors that can't drive, go out to lunch or shop in Seal Beach.
Correct, yes. This would eliminate that taxi service. Option 3, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Just a side comment. I'm constantly surprised about the number of people who use the buses in Leisure World and how knowledgeable they are about how to access these facilities, these amenities that they get from the public sector. And they know where to go, they know how to do it, they're quite competent, and I rely on some of these people to tell me what's going on with the bus system. Is there anything that I can do for you? And they are just full of all kinds of information.
Can I piggyback on that? Because when we couldn't get on Dial-A-Ride, iPhone, map, you hit transit, it asks you where you are, where you want to go, when you want to go there, and it tells you exactly how far you have to walk to get to the next bus, when to transfer, and what to expect when you get there. And that's what we're doing instead of Dial-A-Ride, because the Dial-A-Ride didn't work.
Okay, but that's the OCTA bus system.
And the Long Beach, because they...
And Long Beach as well?
Yeah, because they coordinate. And it takes about 10 minutes to get from Leisure World to Old Town.
Yeah.
On the bus.
On the first one, the Dial-A-Ride, that's the trips, not the passengers. Is that what that is?
Correct. So that 9,000 is for trips only. So it means that that certain rider is going to a certain destination on that trip alone, and it qualifies for both round trip.
So it's $100,000 for 9,000 trips. Is about $10.9 a ride.
Yeah.
Which seems pretty high if you're just in the city limits.
Right, but we do get subsidy from AQMD and also OCTA.
And you stated that the AQMD and the OCTA funds wouldn't be eliminated if anything else was eliminated?
Right, there's no, our contribution or our revenue from AQMD and OCTA would not be in an impact.
We mentioned briefly about the Uber and the Lyft. Does that apply in any way, or is that still an option or not an option, or is that just go as you wish type of thing with Uber?
It's something that we didn't really, I personally didn't look into that much, but
Okay, Mayor, just to touch on that, we did look into it about a year and a half ago. I know there was a South Orange County city that is doing Lyft and Uber. There haven't been many cities that have jumped on board with the Lyft Uber, particularly because of liability and some of the things that happen on with the drivers, them not being fully vetted, like taxi drivers. So if the council wanted to head in that direction, staff could certainly look into it and come back with the viability of that program.
I wasn't proposing. I was just kind of curious if it was, an option on the table. With the, what's it, Abazar? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Do they have like a customer service rating or a satisfaction rating? Do you know anything about how their services are, how they're rated, if they're rated at all, or?
I haven't seen any, but I could ask the county. They can give me an open opinion about.
That'd be good to see, if it's something that seems to be working or if it's not working. I mean, I wouldn't want to implement anything that's not, people aren't happy with. And if I know that ahead of time, it'd be a good thing to know before we implement something that's out there in the open. And there's a lot of negativity, or on the flip side, there's a lot of positive things. That's good too. So.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I think we'll just continue then with the next item. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We're just going to kind of go right back in the direction that it just came from. Steve, who do you have to talk about the tree trimming?
I would ask Tim to please assist.
So just to give a brief overview to control costs this year, staff is proposing that we reduce tree trimming. That is included in the budget document. Our current vendor, their contract does expire beginning of next fiscal year, so we will have to rebid it. So there is a little bit of unknown in it, but we think as long as we can, what we would be proposing would be to remove the fan palms and not trim the fan palms this year. They don't present a high amount of liability. Really what it would be more based on, it's more of a visual, a little less appealing. I will tell you it's kind of a 1 year because I don't think we could go more than a year without trimming them. We would still trim all the queen palms and the date palms and anything like that that does have a seeding. And then as we did, what we would normally do is grid prune on a schedule, so we would grid prune an area of town, and we usually do that about every 5 years. What we would be proposing is that we would be trimming only on an as-needed basis for this year to try and control costs. If there's any questions.
Any questions? I had one. Obviously, if you saw a tree that needed to be trimmed, you trim the tree.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it because it's not on the schedule.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we have as an advantage is having Joe on staff now. He is a certified arborist who is trained in tree trimming and tree removal himself. So we have picked up a lot of smaller jobs, both full removals and trimming jobs in-house. We'll do our best to keep that up to date, obviously, but what we're going to be trimming from is mainly from a point of view of reduction of liability as opposed to what looks better.
Right.
And I think our main goal here was to make sure you guys are aware because this is something that the residents will feel.
Right. Okay.
So.
Leave your phone open.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
I was upstairs once when one of your constituents came up very unhappy about the trees.
So next, then, we will give you a refresher on beach grooming operations.
I'm going to ask Dave Faith to come on up to the podium. He's our maintenance supervisor at this point. So as Dave comes up, I'll go ahead and give an overview, and he can answer the more detailed questions because he's got very hands-on experience with the subject. The overview is currently we are grooming the beach 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Staff hours required is about 186 per week, that includes 20 hours overtime, and of course we're trying to target for a savings. How can we reduce the overtime? So working with Dave came up with a proposal. We would groom the beach 5 days a week, and at the midweek, we would essentially not groom the beach, but we would do the other activities, of course, that day. And should a storm come, we would have staff to obviously get right down to the beach and do what we need to do to make sure that beach is safe. So the proposal originally was Tuesday and Wednesday, but in our last workshop, we suggested maybe a Tuesday, Thursday. That way it doesn't have 2 days of collection, which is an excellent idea. And we would definitely incorporate it that way. So, and that results in a staff hour requirement of, we believe, 125 hours. I think that's an estimate, but we can do it with no overtime. And that's the key here for savings. So by eliminating the overtime and working out some other efficiencies, it's $50,000 to $60,000 worth of savings we can realize. And we're trying to be conservative there too, so I think that's a very realistic target. Dave, would you like any details to that?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. To further build on what Steve was saying, we would be raking the beach 5 days a week with part-time employees. We would also supplement with 2 full-time employees over those 2 days as needed, if needed. The needs and expectations of the community, we're trying best to meet them in a most efficient way, and utilizing part-time staff with full-time staff is kind of how we came to this conclusion here. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Council?
Yeah, I have some. Dave, as I told you on Tuesday, you're doing an excellent job, and I want to thank you very much for what you're doing. The residents I know appreciate it because I'm not getting the complaints I was getting before, so thank you. So to clarify, we will clean the beach 7 days a week.
We will clean the beach 5 days a week, and if needed, 7 days a week. Those 2 extra days would be done with part-time staff, thus reducing the overtime cost.
Okay, so I'm confused. We're going to use part-time staff on the 2 days that we don't clean the beach, so we are going to clean the beach, but with part-time staff, or can you explain it to me better,
Sure.
please?
5 days a week, we're going to utilize part-time staff. If we need to clean the beach 7 days a week, specifically grooming with the tractor and the implement, we would then bring on our full-time staff for those 2 extra days, which would be in the week, Monday through Friday,
Right.
hopefully Monday through Friday. I mean, that's the goal with the overtime reduction.
But we said that we would still have trash pickup and we would still have hand cleaning. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Everything's the same.
So the beach gets cleaned 7 days a week. It's just that they're not going to run the sanitizer 7 days a week.
Unless needed.
Unless needed.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so to say
summertime,
that the
yeah.
beach is only going to be cleaned 5 days a week is not accurate.
Well, if I may, I think the definition of the term clean, grooming is the rake, dragging by tractor. That is the proposal to not do that 7 days a week. The remaining functions would be 7 days a week.
Okay, so I want to be really clear about this because we have 2 Sun newspaper reporters in the front row.
That's correct.
And when they report that we are only going to clean the beach 5 days a week, I want it to be really clear that we are going to clean the beach 7 days a week.
That is correct.
But 5 days a week, we will use the groomer and sanitizer, and the rest of the time, the trash will be picked up and the beach will be hand cleaned. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Is the savings that you're talking about, that's already been factored into this budget, right? And so that doesn't include the, okay, thanks.
Just so you know, I go out there once a week, sometimes twice a week, and I notice that, the trash is being picked up and the trash cans are picked up, and I really appreciate the hard work that your team is doing. So kudos to that, and keep up the good work. And like Ellery said, we are the first people to hear it when things are bad. I know sometimes it's easy to say do it in the summer because there's more people out there, but I think with the winter and the runoff, sometimes that needs a closer look. And I know you're doing that too. And I think with a lot of these contracts, they're all up for amendment if needed. So it's as needed basis. If it calls for it, we'll do it. But at this time, that's the proposal, so thank you.
All right, Steve, you or Tim?
Why don't we bring Tim back down?
They're getting mileage on their pedometers today.
Yeah, I could definitely set it up. We have a Gentrail Services contract citywide, and this $220,000 includes both facilities and our beach facilities, our bathrooms specifically down there. And Tim is very familiar with this. He manages the contract, so go ahead, Tim.
What we're proposing is we will have to terminate the contract and rebid out our contract with a reduced scope of service. So right now we're in every building 5 times a week, not including, and I'll get into the beach in a little bit more and how we manage that one. So what we're doing right now is we're in every building 5 times, and we're planning to reduce that wherever we can. So, and again, we just want to be upfront with you. We've looked at all the buildings and individually as to what the needs are and what the use is to see where we think we can better do it. What we'll also look at is more seasonal too, like for instance, the community centers, they see a higher usage over summer, but over the winter we could reduce it. We'll supplant with in-house staff where we can too, so if it's a smaller item that we need to just run over there and mop something up, we'll do that where we can. This would be a reduction, I think, I haven't really told all the employees yet, but they'll feel it pretty considerably too, because it's a reduction here at City Hall, a reduction at the police department, a reduction at the public works yard, but we think we can get considerable cost savings with it.
Okay, I've got a real issue with cleanliness, okay, and I think you can get by on a lot of these to evaluate them and see how they go. The pier and beach restrooms are already a problem. How are we going to cut down on something we already are a problem?
The beach restrooms, the beach and pier restrooms, to tell you right now, we're paying a porter service to be in there 7 days a week year-round. So we have a person in there that goes back and forth.
What does that mean to me?
So they go to the men's restroom, they clean it, they come out, open it up and go get more supplies, go to the women's restroom, clean it, come back out, get more supplies, go to the men's restroom. And they go back and forth like that as needed. So there's a person that's stationed there 8 hours a day.
Okay, so
right now we're doing, as we've added the First Street restrooms for the past month and a half, they are cleaning the First Street restrooms in that rotation 4 times a day as part of it. So what we would be proposing, and again, as the mayor has said, these are all kind of up in the air and we're going to have to kind of play with them as we go. But what our proposal would be to keep that service at the same levels during peak seasons. And then during off seasons to try and scale it back. Specifically with the beach restrooms, as David just said, he has staff that's in the general area. So if there is emergencies that we do find, we can address those to the best of our abilities. But what we'd like to do is to try and see where we can scale that back and to rescope it to keep the high levels during our peak seasons, which would be kind of the warmer seasons, spring break time, and maybe even the Christmas time because of the shoppers in the area, and see where we can cut back there.
Tuesday, middle of February.
No, we would still be
What
doing
would my cleaning schedule
No,
look
your
like?
cleaning schedule will be 7 days a week. Those restrooms will be clean, but they would not be cleaned. Right now, they're cleaned maybe 10 times a day. They would be cleaned once a day during non-peak season.
Is this already reflected in the budget?
There have been adjustments, yes, that have been made in the budget.
Now, and again, because we would have to rebid it, these are all estimates that staff has made, so we don't know what the real cost will come out once we bid it. So should we find that the costs are better than anticipated, then my goal would say that we keep back in that level within our budget that we have proposed before you.
Those are our only restrooms for Main Street users. I mean, unless they're going into a restaurant or a coffee shop and using theirs, that they're our only public restrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So we could put some signs up and ask them to come to City Hall.
Well, City Hall isn't accessible on the weekends. Well, also the library has restrooms.
All right, I think it's something to think about, because I agree with you that they don't need to have porter service back and forth and back and forth.
One of the other proposals we were considering was to keep the porter service on weekends only, to maybe keep porter service Saturdays and Sundays, and then just reduce it during the week in non-peak seasons. I don't know if they're getting as bad on a Tuesday in January. We might be able to get by on that.
I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and went into the restroom just to check it out, and the restroom really looked good. It was the middle of the week, and it was in the morning, and it was low usage. It looked really good. So, but I didn't see anybody running back and forth either, but.
Yeah, they,
Stay long enough.
I guess not. But, okay, so maybe we could compromise when you go to bid it out. Maybe we can talk about it. Maybe if it were cleaned twice a day depending on what we find out. But it makes me nervous to go out to bid on once a day if really what we need is more than once a day. And then we say, well, that's what we went out to bid on. That's all we can do.
and also too is the way the janitorial schedule works. It kind of depends on when they have people in the city. They're usually pretty open to doing extra cleanings if they have someone here. If it requires them to bring in a person at a different time, that's when their costs go up considerably. But if you're adding a facility during a time that they're already here, and that's something that we'll look at with them. For instance, if they're cleaning the substation, the lifeguard headquarters, they're not going to charge us an additional high rate to just go over to those restrooms and clean them at that time. So that's something we're going to have to play around with, but we just wanted to make the council aware that it is a reduction that could be felt.
You know what's really disappointing is I remember it was about, 2009 or 10 that we redid those beach restrooms, and they were really nice, and everybody still complains about how awful they are. And it's just really a problem because that gives us a big perception hit, both with our residents, our businesses, and our visitors, because it's really an important amenity for those who come in for the day. So maybe we can keep talking about it.
Yeah, and as we scope it out, we'll look at it more to see where there's more opportunities for extra cleaning. But not knowing it's kind of an estimate on our part.
Any other questions? Well, I think you have a good idea of what the usage is in there. And like I said earlier, I go to the beach every week, sometimes twice a week. So I'll make a point to go to the restroom too, just because.
Well, and also with our beach services, so the guys who are picking the trash too, that's one of the biggest things is inspection on them and making sure that we're getting proper inspection for the contract enforcement. So that's something we'll work together with Public Works on to make sure that we're getting that too.
Yeah, that'd be good. More eyes on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Tim, don't go too far, 'cause there's one slide and then you're up again. So on the street sweeping and tree trimming, I'll go ahead and take this one. Again, just a refresher, as Steve mentioned on Tuesday, there's annual costs, and the reason why we're just telling you about this again and reminding you is that the general fund subsidizes both of these programs because neither one of these rates have been raised since they were initially established by resolution in 1988, and that's definitely something that we'll be taking into consideration the next time we do a Prop 218 increase notice for the city.
And Vicki, I think it also, as we go through these, there was one other that I noted, and I don't remember what it was now. Every once in a while we say that this is mandated and this is mandated and this is mandated, and I'd really like to make extra note of that because I don't think our public understands how much of our budget is, first of all, the money's taken away, and then they put on things that we have to spend it on. So I think it's an important point.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Ellery, when we do the 218 notice. That's the kind of information that we can include with the 218 notice. Why are we raising these rates? Here's why, and this is, something that's mandated.
Can you explain the 218, how that works?
Sure. Well, the short version is that when we want to go out and raise rates such as water rates, sewer rates, those kinds of things, we're required to send a notice to the payers of the utility bill, but generally what happens is we also want to send them to the property owners. Sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they're not. So we just sort of over-notify discretion is the better part of valor. So approximately 45 days before the city council would have an opportunity to discuss rate increases, that notification goes out. And that's a period whereby the city can accept comments and voting, depending on how we set it up. And the voting could be as simple as somebody sending in a letter and saying, I don't approve of this rate increase. Or they could send a letter and saying, I approve of this rate increase. I mean, sometimes it happens both ways. The gist of it is then the night we have the water rate hearing or the sewer rate hearing or whatever rate hearing it is, that same group of people also have the opportunity to come in and publicly say yes or no. The test for 218 passing or not passing is 50% plus one. So we have 5,500 utility accounts. In order for a rate to not increase, we would have to get a no vote from 2,500 of the 5,500 or whatever, 2,750 of the 5,500 in order for a rate increase to not pass. And it's a paper notice in the mail. It's not have to walk to a voting booth and vote kind of a thing.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, where'd he go?
Just to give a quick overview, the tennis center, it's a public facility located on Lamson. It's 16 tennis courts. The facility is used for tournament play, open play. There's a membership component. A new component we've added is pickleball over the last few years. It's been very successful. I think where we're getting at in the main point of the slide is the city is offsetting the cost of the facility. It's about a little over almost $34,000. Staff's recommendation is I think it's time that we look at fee increases, and I think the hope is to just make you aware that when we look at the fee resolution this year, staff is going to look at increasing those fees to try and offset that cost and get us closer. I do want to highlight yesterday, I think there was a comment made that the tennis center shouldn't be offset because it's not a youth program. The tennis center does provide a number of youth programs, so I want to make sure you're aware of that. And it also probably quite a bit of senior programming too, because some of our clientele's on the older side, and this is their main source of exercise. So I just wanted to highlight that also, but this is one that we just wanted to make you aware of, and you will see this at a later time, because I think we're at the point where we've trimmed the budget to where we can trim it, and I'm not sure there's much more savings that we can get at the facility. So we're at the point where we just need to look at trying to generate more revenue, and I think we can't do that with just solely more volume. We need to do it with more revenue in and higher fees.
Any questions? Has the pickleball courts increased? I know I went there about a year and a half ago.
They have. We have 8 pickleball courts now. It's been highly successful. We've also instituted a pickleball membership only, so that you can, because you're using less space than you would be on a tennis court, so that you can get a membership on pickleball only. It has generated some pretty large revenue increases for us at the facility, considering that it's using space we already had that was just underutilized at the time. So it has been successful. We'll also be hosting a pickleball tournament in the fall, which it's kind of the first sanctioned pickleball tournament in the Southern California area, so we're pretty proud of that. And I think on that day we'll have like 24 pickleball courts going.
Wow.
So, and we'll have people traveling from Florida to come out here for it, so it'll be a pretty big deal for us.
Yeah, because I remember when I did the tour, they were talking about increasing the number of courts so they can have those sanctioned tournaments.
Yeah, so where we had gone
was real important.
Yeah, originally we started with 4 pickleball courts on a non-lit court, so it was only available during daylight time. We now have 8 pickleball courts on lit courts, so that they're available more hours of the day.
Is there any way to make an investment to get more revenue, or is it just, it is what it is and that's what it is? I mean,
at this time, I would say probably not, because it would require some pretty large capital expenses. We have done some considerable improvements to the facility, so I would recommend against it right now. We've got the facility looking pretty good for what I think.
Well, I know you upgraded the fitness center a year or so ago. I mean, is that being advertised as far as like the public knows that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope the public knows it is being advertised. We also, by doing that, we've actually created a community center what I'd call a smaller community center, but it's a useful community center. We will be using that for summer programming too, which will be, I think, from a increase in service level, is pretty good for us.
Can you just be a member of the fitness center without being a
Yes,
member?
there's a fitness center membership. It's not the size of a 24-hour fitness, but
No.
it's got a lot less people.
What about an LA Fitness?
Now, that's a good, asset for
Yeah.
the city to use. And
Absolutely, and we do our best to keep the equipment up and keep it at a cost effective.
yeah, because it has that, sign there that just says tennis center. It doesn't say anything about fitness center. So I don't know how you can get that, maybe in the next flyer if
Yeah.
you do or something, just to kind of broadcast that, because I think people are always looking for different, sources of exercise, and it's a nice facility, like you said. They did upgrade it just recently, so. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment that, I don't know if you know it, Leisure World is building 3 pickleball courts,
Yeah.
and no competition because it's free. Free for the people who live there.
Yeah.
But, and for anyone else. But, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, I anticipate that to be severely overly used.
Yeah.
And that 3 courts is not going to be enough, because all you have to do is play once, and that's it, you're hooked.
Yeah, and pickleball, it's also, I think, the AIM facility on Westminster's added pickleball to part of their programming. One challenge we are going to have this year is with the reduced summertime for the Los Al school kids, is that our summer programs might take a bit of a hit on that. But it's something that we'll prepare for the best we can.
Thank you.
I think I'd also just like to, so when Tim and I worked together last year on the fees, there was a bit of hesitation about raising them. I don't think there was really any pushback from
No.
I didn't hear from anybody. But one of the things I'd also like to point out is some of that $33,000 cost that you see, that if you were going to want the facility to be fully subsidized, part of that is credit card charges that the city absorbs, so the cost of the credit card fees there. And one of the things that we are going to be bringing to you, City Council, is the fee or cost recovery schedule. I think it's scheduled for June 11th. And we're adding in the administrative section of the cost recovery schedule a credit card fee of $3.50. So that could very well make up quite a bit of the difference that you see there, because the other than the rec programs, the tennis center is the highest user of credit cards in the city, of course, outside of the utility billing, but the same thing. So we'll be mindful of the cost recovery that we're going to be doing of that, but also looking at the fees that we're charging again.
Thank you.
Steve, who's going to take this one?
I will. With help from Tim, of course. So this is just this slide that shows the efforts that's put into Main Street to keep it as presentable as possible. And as we do have 3 major contracts, pressure washing, $42,000 annually, and paver maintenance, and we really worked on this particular work item. That's the pavers and keeping ADA compliant. We've changed our process, and $20,000 is as efficient as it's going to get, and Joe has been extremely helpful in this. So I feel we're very efficient on this particular item. Annual tree trimming, Joe, is our arborist, is really recommending we stop trimming every year the trees. Actually, he feels the trees will be healthier if we skip a year. So we're recommending a $7,000 saving. That would be a $7,000 savings. He says that's an opportunity, and it would actually be helpful for the trees. The trash can, it's a savings cost, but there's definitely a savings. So we are looking at that. We can definitely, the pressure washing, I would refer to Tim. Tim, I think our pressure washing process is about as efficient as we're going to get, or is there any comments on that? That's the only other place I could see savings, maybe.
It's as
efficient as it's going to get for that price.
Okay. And would you say it's sufficient?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's, we're able to play with it a lot where we can just kind of call out an area of high need. So we expect it every Tuesday to see what the area of most need is. We can usually do about a sixth of the whole street once a week. So we just look out on Tuesdays, see what's the most needed area, call it in, and then that area gets cleaned that night. It seems like it's been better. On another note, we also did try treating the trees this year with an anti-fruiting hormone, and we tried it at different times in areas so that we're trying to find a time frame that works best to perform that treatment. If we could get the trees to stop fruiting, our pressure washing costs would go down considerably. So that's on another note.
So, Tim, I know that the street cleaning is one of the things we get the most complaints about because it is a health and safety issue also. And can you explain how we're doing it right now? You gave us a little bit of an overview.
Yes, so what we do is weekly we have a contractor who comes down with a pressure wash. It's a little bit of a tougher. They don't just come down and they can't just hose down the street and let it go down the gutters. So they have to capture all their water, vacuum it up, and actually recycle that water. So they do that once a week. They can do one half of a block. So we have 3 blocks, so they can do half of each one of those. So the way for it to most efficiently work is to just inspect it weekly and pick out what's the most. So sometimes they might wash the same area 2 weeks in a row, but if that's the area of the most need, that's the area that we do.
So does the 100 block get the most washing then?
Actually, I think the 200 block on the side where Bay Hardware is.
Well, Bay Hardware has a particular problem, I know.
Yeah. And another thing, so when the trees went in, ficus trees didn't fruit until about 2009.
Isn't that interesting?
It was a wasp that came here that actually made them start fruiting.
That's so interesting.
So when the trees went in, they weren't picked because, they probably would have been a factor that we would have looked at.
Yeah. That's just fascinating to me that a wasp did that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something else that needs to be noted. It's not just the trees. It's if you talk to the gal that owns Yvette's Bikinis, she gets to come to work to ice cream and vomit on the street in front of her store. So, and with all the AQMD regulations, they can't wash their sidewalks down, and they can't keep them clean in the way they would want to do that. And sweeping that up isn't exactly an easy thing to do. So I really appreciate the effort that you've put into it because it's been one of our biggest challenges.
And also another note is, as Steve referenced, the landscape maintenance contract that we're bringing to you at the next council meeting. If you'll remember when we did the scope, we added some extra care to Main Street, and so that'll be included in that contract too. So we should have a maintenance person blowing it off 3 days a week, which I think will help considerably with the leaf debris.
Right.
And then they'll also be cleaning the stub outs very regularly, which is a challenge because that's where stuff gets stuck and the street sweeper can't get it.
Yeah, and that's where the mosquitoes breed too.
Mm-hmm. So I think you'll see improvements just...
Perfect. That's great. You guys have done great work. Thank you.
No problem.
So the next slide is just not a decision necessarily that the council needs to make today, but just again a reminder, we've got the $1,290,000 MOE requirement every year. The projected revenue, at least at this point in time, coming in.
Was that a mandate?
Well, yeah, technically, if we want to participate, it's a mandate.
Thank you.
So we get about an extra $440,000 projected right now, and it's just a matter of, if we've got to spend 1.3 and we're only getting the extra 440 in, is it something that really makes sense for us to do right now? And in talking with the state controller's office, this is not something where we'll say we don't want the money and just send it back. This is just, even if we don't spend it and decide to give it back, we still have to collect it. We still have to take care of it. We still have to do all those things. And when we don't meet the MOE, the state controller's office will call us and say, you haven't met it, send us the money back, and then we would send the money back. So if we get it and don't spend it, we're not going to be able to use it for anything else except to generate a little bit of interest income. And there we go.
Very good. We have a request to take a 15-minute break.
I was just going to ask about the.
Oh, go ahead.
The 1.2 million that we have to spend on, would that be general fund, or could it be CIP?
I think David Spitz is actually really, really well informed, as well, Michael maybe, but it's something called discretionary money that has to be spent. So it kind of depends on which bucket it comes from.
He needs to come to the mic.
Can you come to the mic, please?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Wow, that's loud. It can generally be used on CIPs, but it's really loud. It has to be general fund related, so, or certain aspects of money, like you can't use water or sewer funding or other aspects like that to go into that MOE.
Mr. Moore asked a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would the pool be considered?
Without looking it up, the exact regulations, I don't believe so, but.
No, because it has to be street road related, and it would be hard to make a nexus.
The road to the pool.
The road to the pool, yes, potentially.
The parking lot at the pool.
Okay.
Can it be a parking lot?
I am not versed enough to answer that question. I don't think anybody here is
Not yet.
necessarily
We're not
versed
ready
enough.
for that yet
Yeah, we're
anyway.
not.
Yeah, of course, the elephant in the room is if the voters reject it, then we don't need to worry about all of that.
Right.
That helps me. Thanks.
Thank you. So let's take a 15-minute recess and be back here at 7:37, please. I think I am ready to proceed. Were there any comments, other comments?
I have to see that.
No, I was
You're
done. I have a new mic, so now you can hear me. Well, a different mic, not a new one.
Okay, so now we go to oral communication again?
So why don't we go to oral communication?
Oh,
And do the public
I'm
comment?
sorry, Mayor. I do have one quick comment. Elena, during the break, went back to her office and got the cash balances. So we have it as of April 30th.
Okay.
It's not indicative of anything, but we can go ahead and tell you where they are now.
Do you want it certain particular fund, or you're only interested in the enterprise fund?
Water, sewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Water capital, sewer capital, and vehicle replacement.
Okay. So the cash balance as of April 30th, currently right now for the water operation is $1,542,233. The capital improvement water fund cash balance is $7,647,789. The vehicle replacement currently is, as of April 30th, is $1,596,687. Sewer operation is $431,210. And finally, the sewer capital is $7,129,390.
Okay, so again, those are just a snapshot in time, not indicative of where we'll end for the year.
Thank you for providing that.
Could I ask that all the PowerPoint presentations be sent out electronically, please?
We'll have them posted online.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let's move to public comment. We'll give 5 minutes, and I'll just let you know around 4:30. If you go over, there's no big deal, so just keep it going.
Okay. I'm Joyce, Old Town, Seal Beach. Why isn't the jail up for some kind of cost to improve the jail cost for putting jailers up, pay jailers up? The taxpayers have to fund a lot of that jail up there. Close it down. It was closed down for a long time. Didn't cost us hardly any money. But then they put $1 million in it to improve it. Then you didn't have the Sunset Aquatic Park on there. How often do we have to go over there, the jail, the police, or the fire department? And we don't hardly get any money, and we pay their water bill. Why isn't that on there? And why don't we take the bed tax into consideration? I think it's been a while since we did the bed tax, and all the hotels are adding more bed tax to their hotels, and this one down here is full just about all the time. I'm not sure about the other two, but that would be an easy way to get some money from all the rooms that are rented out for a night or a week. And then the other thing about the pensions. All the people that work here and getting the pensions and CalPERS, if they don't take any vacation days, they take that money and purchase more money on their pensions. There are a lot of cities now that are telling them if you don't take the pension, the vacation days in a year that you get them, they're gone. You can't go back and buy down and pay the money and buy down some more pension money. You can't do that. That needs to be done. That's one way to solve some of the problems, because the pension, you're already talking about having to do another bond for pensions. This isn't going to solve the problem. When they come up and want to do the bonds, be careful. We have 3 people coming up to vote on coming up this November, and we'll know who they are in a couple more months. So anyway, the pay-to-play jail costs, the Sunset Aquatic Park, a bed tax is easy to pass here. And if you want to stay in the city and stay for 30 years without taking your vacation days, take them off. Don't let them take it and put it on their pensions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I say
Yeah,
a couple
absolutely.
comments, please? So, with regard to pensions, absolutely not is vacation included in that calculation. It used to have been, but it has not been for a number of years. There is an opportunity to convert unused sick time to additional years of service credit within the limitations of whatever the agreement is with the agency has with CalPERS. So absolutely vacation, no way does it roll into.
Is it capped, the vacation time?
Well, we do have vacation hours that are capped, yes, but regardless, it doesn't go towards CalPERS at all.
Do our sick times here in the city of Seal Beach go into CalPERS?
There is an option for retirees to allow for their sick time to be converted into additional years of service credit. I don't know all the limitations of all the different groups, but I do know that we do have some groups that do have that as part of their MOU.
And I understand that we have, by law, they need to be paid for their sick time. Is that correct? Or not?
No, there's some cash out provisions, so we don't, if they take it, yes. If they don't use it, there's some cash out provisions. But one of the things that all agencies have, well, I can't say all, but hopefully all agencies have, is something called compensated absences. So we take a certain portion of the vacation, unpaid vacation, the unpaid sick time, and we account for the value of those hours in the financial statements so that we present information that has the limits of like the vacation accrual max or the sick time max. There's some different things, but we account for those in the financial statements.
And vacation can't be use it or lose it, right?
I am not a lawyer.
Well, we don't have a lawyer here.
Use it or lose it. I'm sure that there's rules, but we don't have that rule.
There are, but I don't know.
Sure.
So, in regarding to your questions for vacation, there is a cap for each group. And so it's not a matter of use it or lose it. Once the cap is reached, the employee can no longer accrue. They stop accrual. And so when an employee retired or if they resign, those vacations get paid out to them. It doesn't apply to the service credit. However, the sick leave, based on each group MOU, there is a certain percentage that will get applied to the service credit. So, for example, I believe OCEA and SBSPA, they don't have a sick leave payout when they leave. So, therefore, whatever the balance on the sick leave, if they retired, it gets applied to their service credit. The mid-management get 25% payout. Whatever the balance is will be applied to the service credit. And so in regards to CAP, we have OCEA, SBSPA, mid-management and executive, who are capped at 520 hours on sick leave. However, POA and PMA doesn't, it's unlimited. So there is no cap on the sick leave. So when you have a sworn officer retired, the officer has the option to cash out 20% of whatever the balance at the time they retired. The remaining, I believe, the remaining balance may apply to the service credit. I have to look at the MOU again, but the POA and the PMA are the only group that doesn't have a cap, and so it's unlimited.
So those are really good things to take into consideration when doing negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment?
Good evening, Robert Goldberg again. I'd like to sort of follow up on where I left off on Tuesday evening with some possible ideas for reducing our expenditures in the general fund. And I had mentioned briefly about the possibility of using M2 funds to continue paying for our street lights and subsidizing the senior bus program. What I've been able to do since Tuesday night is actually do some spreadsheet work regarding the MOE for the Measure 2, as well as looking at our ending fund balance in that M2 fund. And I sent this morning. I did send some of my work to Mr. Miter for him to review. But it's my assessment is that we could continue using about $55,000 of the M2 for the streetlights and $120,000 of the M2 for the senior bus. M2 money cannot be used for maintenance of effort on the SB1, and staff described that to you. It has to be discretionary general fund money. It can't be M2 money to count towards your MOE on the SB1. And these two projects, these aren't street projects that would be done with, they're not street projects. So I would be curious, I hope Mr. Miter may have had time to review what I sent to him and perhaps can comment on that. But that's potentially $55,000 plus $120,000 of M2 to help out. Regarding the gas tax funds, and I'm not talking about SB1, but the traditional gas tax funds that we get. Last year we used $550,000 of that for overhead, and that was a lot of money, and we don't have that much money. And that would, using that much money to offset our salaries would impact SB1. But I also sent to Mr. Miter a sample SB1 maintenance of effort calculation that I was able to do based on the one from last year. And I think we could still transfer about $100,000, maybe $50,000 to $100,000 from the gas tax funds into our overhead for street maintenance, and still have a good cushion in our maintenance of effort for SB1. And again, I sent that detail to Mr. Miter, and I'd be interested in see what his opinion is after reviewing the detail that I sent. Next, I want to talk about a couple of ideas that staff hasn't presented regarding cost savings. And one has to do with our recreation guide. In 2015, staff on their own initiative suspended mail-out of the recreation guide. I don't know if they stopped printing it also, but they stopped mailing it out, presumably to stop printing it. I have my estimate on how much it costs to print and send that out is about $30,000, but that's based on my watching checks, so that is approximate. There's also design costs, and we still have a design cost, but the printing of 5,000 to 6,000 and the mailing of 5,000 to 6,000, I think costs about $30,000. So staff did that on their own as cost savings at the beginning of 2015. And so there was no first quarter rec program mailed. There was none. But there was blowback because that was our centennial year, and the rec guide was, people wanted that to be used to help publicize the centennial events. And so there was blowback, and so staff resumed printing that. My recollection was that staff agreed to resume that for the rest of 2015, but then their intention was to stop it in 2016. They didn't stop it, they continued it. So I'm not here to argue, should we mail it out, not mail it out. I'm not really prepared to make that argument, but I think it's something worth discussion. It was a staff initiative a few years ago. And then lastly, last year I talked about the school resource officer, which is the 25% of a position that we subsidize for the high school. And apart from whether that's a good idea, and maybe it's a great idea, the real question is who should pay for it, whether we should chip in our $43,000 to that position or whether the school district should pay. We started this in 2013 because at that time the school district was cash strapped and we wanted to help out. Now we have record revenue at the state level. The school districts get, I think, 40% or 42% of that. So I haven't looked at their budget, but they should be getting a lot of money from the state. So their budget should look good. Now we are cash strapped, and so the question is, wouldn't it be appropriate for them to pay for this as a school expense? Now, we did help them out when they needed help, but now we need the help. 5 years, 10 years from now, and that may flip, and we can start paying for it again. But that's $43,000 a year. For this budget, we have to give them a 5-month notice. So I'm figuring just a half a year. The savings for this budget may be $21,500 because we have to give them a 5-month notice. But again, it's not the question of how important that is. It's a question of who should pay for it in this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I comment real quick?
Yes, please.
I think it's important, Mr. Goldberg emphasized about the school resource officer. I'm going to tell you, I have 3 kids in the system. I got elementary, high school, and college level. I think today with the situations we are having in school shootings, I think it's imperative not to reduce the necessity for a school resource officer. It shouldn't even be discussed as far as I'm concerned, other than the fact that if there's other avenues, but until that avenue is reached, I don't believe we should be discussing reducing that position or anything like that. I just want that on record.
Okay. Did we want to address the other comments, Steve, or do you want to wait for Mr. Brady to go? Okay. Jim?
Good evening.
Thank you.
Jim Brady. I tell you, as a resident, it's been painful the last couple of days watching the contortions that the department heads and staff have gone through to try and reduce the budget. I really commend them for their effort, but it's not really addressing the big problem that we've got here in the city. It's just a minor part of what it's going to cost to run the city. So tonight I'm going to talk about the police department budget. And I was really surprised the other night when I heard that there was going to be no increase in police officers. And then when I saw that there was not going to be any in the supplemental budget, at least there wasn't even a proposal for it, it was really disheartening. So just to let you know, this is kind of like breaking news. There's going to be additional police officers in the city. It's just how is it that we're going to fund them? There's a police study survey that's going on right now, and in all likelihood, it's going to recommend an increase in police officers. And although we may not get the ideal number, there is going to be a minimum number that's going to be suggested, and it's going to be more than what we currently have. So how are we going to resolve the conflict between not having enough money in the budget and the need for additional police officers? Now, the city council is going to be in the unenviable position to find additional revenue. And this is the responsibility that you took on when you successfully ran for city council. And I'm sure you're aware of the Senate bill that's going through the California legislature right now, where if there's a shortfall in the city's budget, the council members are jointly and severally liable for the deficit.
Where do I go to resign?
I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see if I still had your attention.
Stop breathing.
Yeah. Obviously, the city's proposed budget is not going to be able to fund the additional police officers that we need. So the alternative is not going to be popular. It's something, though, that each of you took on as a responsibility when you became a city council person, and you're going to have to face these unpopular decisions that you're going to have to make. When you ran for city council, I know that you didn't feel that it was going to be something that you're going to be the most popular person in town. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to be able to please everybody. There's going to be people that are going to be displeased. And I will tell you, if there's anything that you do as a city council that increases money to me, I will be displeased. I will not be happy about it. But I will respect what you did because it's something that you have to do. So you authorized $50,000 or almost $50,000 for the police study that's being done. And I think that each one of you knew at the time that the police study is going to show that you need additional police officers on the street. And if you're not willing to take the steps necessary to make sure that we have funding for those police officers, you should have never authorized that $50,000. That could have been a $50,000 cost savings. So now you as the city council needs to find a way to fund these additional officers that we need. And I know it's not going to be easy, but it's something that you have to do to help the city. We're not going to be able to do it through the $10,000 and $20,000 and $30,000 that people are suggesting where we're cutting services and things like that. We need to increase the police services for the benefit of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments this time? I'll open it up to the council. Looking to my right. Looking to my left. Looking to my other right.
All right, I'll start if you want. I want to piggyback off of what Jim Brady just said, because we can slash and burn all we want. We can sell City Hall, we can sell the annex, we can sell off the Greenbelt, we can slash and burn every single person that works here in City Hall, and we can close our doors and stop being a municipality. And I think that the state would be very happy if we did so, and they could take us over and we could become a state annex. They obviously feel that they can run us better than we can run ourselves, since they take all of our money and put all the unfunded mandates that they want to see us do onto us, which has brought us to the place that we are. We have not created this problem. What has created this problem is that huge crash in 2008 and the pension costs, which at the same time began to get really out of control. We have always had very strong reserves. We still have really strong reserves today. I am not anxious in any way, shape, or form to spend any more of our reserves, because that's slashing and burning, and when they are gone, we're done. So the first thing I'd like to do is ask Vicki, Vicki, how much one-time money are we putting into this budget? Because I know there's one thing that I heard on Tuesday night that was very disappointing to me.
Ellery, there's about 1.5 roughly million that is coming in from insurance settlement money in this fiscal year. And the reason that one-time money is helping us balance the budget for next year is because it's going into the Tidelands Fund. And because it's going into the Tidelands Fund, the general fund subsidy is not needed in the next fiscal year. The year after that, we're going to have challenges, but this one-time money, and there's some other settlement payments that have come in. They're also helping to bolster the city's cash position as well, but primarily it's the insurance money that's going to be coming in this year and next.
And this insurance money we got from what?
The roughly $5 million that is coming in this year is from the replacement cost of the structures that burned on the Pier fire.
Okay, so that's like spending our pool money, which we also have done for 2 cops. We do not have the money now to build the restaurant at the end of the pier. That's one-time monies that we're putting in here to balance this budget. That does not make me happy. It does not, I don't think it is ever correct to hire personnel from one-time money. Now, since philosophically, I believe our first requirement as a council is to provide safety and security for our residents, we had no choice. But at this juncture, we need to find, if we want to stay Seal Beach, if we want to still have a fire department, if we still want to have a police department, and if we want to hold on to whatever semblance of local control we have to find a way to finance it. The state took how much from us in redevelopment? As I remember, $6 million?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
$6 million they took, bing, out of the bank. And then they put on all of these other things that we have to pay for. We've done a good job. We've got our streets at 85%. We've got the new storm drain going down Electric Avenue. We have spent our money wisely. The state, who is not here tonight, has not. And in order to balance their budget, which, as Joe pointed out, they now have a surplus at our expense. So I am not happy. But we need to finish slashing and burning before we can move on to revenue generation. So one thing that has not been brought up that I would like to look at is I would like to look at some reclassifications of some positions in City Hall, and I will defer to the city manager to bring those possibly to closed session, and I would like to talk with you offline, since it's personnel issues, about that so that you can bring that into closed session, and I'd like that to go into closed session. I also would like to add every position that we can that will return service to our residents and our businesses that are paid for from full cost recovery. Because there's no reason that we should have a building official one day a week when we can get full cost recovery from that. Okay, so if it's a service that's being used by residents and businesses that is being paid for, then those should be fully burdened positions. A question, I mean, it's just rhetorical in some sense, but I'd like to hear an answer. Can we withdraw from CalPERS?
Yes, actually we can. The difference now with the change in regulations is when agencies elect to withdraw, CalPERS does a calculation, and so in order to withdraw, we would actually have to fund 100% of the future retirement of the people that are in the system.
Okay, and what is our unfunded balance at this point? About? Are we 70?
We're roughly 70% funded, plus or minus. I mean, it's multi-millions.
Okay, so we can't. We cannot practically, but theoretically we can. Because although their rate of returns is better than what we get as an individual entity, and I understand that, they've gone through periods up and down of severe mismanagement, and we've borne the burden of that as well.
I'm sorry, I said 100%, and I don't want to be misquoted or anything like that. I'm not sure that it's 100%. I just know it's a big dollar amount right now. And our unfunded liability, Elena just pulled it out. Is that
of her brain?
This is only for, well, she actually has a piece of paper in front of her.
Oh,
but
okay,
yes,
thank you.
For general fund, excuse me, for general fund employees, the unfunded liability was about $27.5 million as of June 30 last year.
Okay, so that's not a practically feasible thing to do, but at least it's good to know that theoretically it's out there. We're going to get into a discussion of fire at a later date, so I don't want to get into the discussion of fire. But when we talk about slashing and burning, the only thing that is like rammed in my brain at the moment is ambulance service. Because today we could do our own ambulance service and make $1 million+ off of it, but we can't because a prior council gave it away. I do not want to slash and burn in that way, that we are at whatever we do, the consequences down the road ties the hands of another council the way our hands have been tied. I would like to look into, Vicki, and I know you are, the Long Beach parking lot remanagement process that you were talking about. I think we should get, we should get the maximum off of the parking we have. I am still extraordinarily angry over the fact that we had a resident who reported us to Coastal last year when you had a letter in your file saying that we could do that without going to Coastal. And because a resident called, we lost $200,000, and Coastal said to us, well, that was then and this is now, and you had a resident call, so we can do this. And that resident cost us $200,000. So we need to get that through Coastal, and we need to look at keeping all the money that we can. I'd like to ask our Chief Joe, you said that you've taken out 2 LPR readers, which I guess is redundant. Is that going to affect service levels, or were they just like backup or?
Yes, it would affect service levels, but it's part of a bigger project anyways, a CIP project, potentially in the future, in covering cameras throughout the city, so they can wait.
We're not ready for them yet, is what you're saying. Okay, they're not cooked. Okay. All right, I want to maintain service levels wherever we can maintain service levels. And Vicki, tonight you said you're concerned that with all the slashing and burning that we're doing of personnel, that people say, well, obviously you never used them. Believe me, when we didn't have landscape, we heard about landscape day in and day out. When we slash and burn to the service level we're talking about, people are going to notice it. And this council sitting up here are going to be the first line. If we slash and burn on the dial-a-ride, Tom and Sandra are going to be the first ones to hear about it. So it's, I don't think that people are going to take lightly what we've done here this time. The recreation guide, Robert's absolutely right. That was something staff had presented and implemented, and he called it blowback. All I know is I had a coffee, and there was a whole team of people that came and talked to us about it. And it wasn't just the centennial; it was the mode of communication that went to every resident in the community. Now we've got our website up and running, and we get out that way a little more, and we've got our newsletter that is being put out that's really well done on the website. So maybe if staff wants to go back and look at their recommendation and make some decisions on that, I think that's open. But it is the number one way that every resident and every business receives a portion of their tax dollar back in their mailbox. I believe it was, I don't remember the name of the gal, the interim finance person that we had before Vicki. Shelley Lynn. Shelley Lynn told me, when you've got a good project is when the most of your taxpayers are benefiting from it. And certainly that's the recreation guide. However, we do have a website, although, Patrick, I agree, it hasn't had a major overhaul in many moons, and hopefully we can get it there. But you're certainly working on it. Thank you. The resource officer. Philosophically, I think that education dollars should go only for education. I don't believe that they should go into busing. I don't believe it should go into police. I don't believe it should go anywhere else. Our education dollars should do what they're targeted to do, and that is to educate children. I never thought I would be living in a day and age when I thought that an armed officer on a campus was a good idea. Now I don't think we have enough. So I would like, on the resource officer, to continue our 25% and ask the city manager to please contact our county supervisor, and I will also do the same and get the county to pay their fair share. They are not, and Rossmore has probably the most children in the district. So I think they should be paying their fair share. I think that we should Prop 218 everything we can, because why are we subsidizing the things that people are using and not paying for? I don't understand that. If it is something that is used, it should be paid for, and we shouldn't be draining general fund to do so. At my last coffee, I had a woman say to me, well, you can hire more cops. It's just a matter of priorities, and you set the priorities. So I think what we should do is stop collecting trash. We should stop paving streets. We shouldn't build any more storm drains. We should close the doors to City Hall. And you, Chief Miller, can become city manager and chief, and you can run the entire city, and we will give you a few more cops. And that's my priority.
I'll second that.
So, on the actual things, Vicki, you did a great job in summarizing in fact, you did such a great job, I'm not sure that we need to go through till next Monday, but let's take a look at it. On the League of California Cities, the one thing I have always wanted to put in the budget and not been able to is to find a full-time lobbyist in Sacramento, because, when we go through our threats and, strengths and all of that, the number one threat that this city faces, besides our safety issues, is what Sacramento's doing to us. My son's an attorney, and I like to say that what he does is protect his clients from their government. We need somebody to protect our little city from our government, and that's what a lobbyist does. There is a new bill out called AB 1912. We didn't find out about it until it was on its third amendment, and it could bankrupt us. Bankrupt us. Without a full-time presence in Sacramento, we're dead. We're gone. So the League of California Cities is that full-time lobbying service, and we actually, I think, have a very good league representative that sends us out a lot of things. He sent that out a little late, but I think if we make use of what we're paying for, then we can, that can be our presence, and we definitely need a presence because they're after us. Philosophically, anything that's health, welfare, and safety should come first, and anything else I think needs to be thought of to go for now. That isn't the quality of life that any one of us wanted for our residents. It's not the quality of life that any of our residents want. But right now, we need to survive. And at that point, we come down to health, welfare, and safety. And for that reason, on the bus, the senior bus transportation is not a Leisure World program. So I think we should take that myth out of the mix. It's not a Leisure World program. It's a senior program. And to get people to senior meals is a health, welfare, and safety issue, and I think that we need to get them to their senior meals. To get to the doctor is a health and safety welfare measure. We need to get them to their doctor's appointments. Other than that, we don't need to take them shopping. We don't need to take them to the jewelry store, and we don't need to take them to lunch with their friends. They can hop the bus, or they can call Access, or they can call the county bus service and do their social transportation that way. Or, team up with a friend and get a ride. Also, Golden Ring used to help us with some of that transportation. They don't help us at all anymore. We helped them when they were in need. They could step up and help us now that we're in need. I do believe that we need to treat each other reciprocally. I think that's all I have. I think that's all I have. I don't know that it's enough, but it's all I have for right now. We need to go out and ask the folks. Joyce, is she still here? Of course not. She left. Anyway, I do think we should look at TOT. I do think that we should look at sales tax. I don't think we should look at them on the same ballot. However, I definitely think that we need to look at Prop 218, and we have to have more officers because safety is first. At another day and time, we can have a discussion about Judge Carter and what he's doing about the homeless issue, but he has threatened to lift our ability to enforce overnight camping in our town. If that happens, folks, we don't have time to hire enough cops. So we got to do it ahead of time. We got to look ahead. So with that, I'm done. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Shelley, Sandra, a few words?
Thank you, Ellery. I do agree with you on the League of Cities. I think it's important to have somebody that's watching in Sacramento what's going on and letting us know what's going on. They also provide, in addition to updates, valuable training that I think is worthwhile to us. So the ACCOC is valuable too, but we're allowed to participate with them being non-members, so I appreciate that. I also think that the senior meals and senior transportation is we have a valuable service. We have a lot of seniors, not only Leisure World, but in our group or in our neighborhood. Some trimming maybe could be possible and work on that, but I'd like to see that continue. I also agree that looking at what we have available to us, the sales tax, the TOT, Proposition 218, I agree that trying to get recovery for our fees is what we're just going to have to do. We're just going to have to pass them on. Let's see what else. Okay. Well, for right now, that's what I got.
Thank you, Shelley. Sandra?
Well, many of my concerns have been addressed by both people here. But in terms of the senior meals program, Leisure World is going to probably step up and take over one of the bus programs, and the $20,000. So we'll see if we can get some more out of them. But it is certainly an item to put on the agenda when we have our joint working meeting with Leisure World, and see how we can come out of that one. My philosophy...
Thank you for working on that.
Yeah, I've been doing that for...
Thank you.
It's been a few months now. In terms of Prop 218, I don't know that we've ever asked anyone since I've lived here for an increase in 218, or since it's been decades or ever.
The water rates were increased, and the last rate increase we had was actually in 2014. So water and sewer, the water rates, but not the sewer rates, were 218.
Well, I'm totally in favor of cost recovery, and because it gives us the money that we need to buy the people that we need to serve our community. I have no problem with asking for a sales tax item on the next ballot, if we can make it. And I'll say that I'm not sure that 1% might be enough. I'm I'm willing to go for more, but I'll go with the majority. But I don't think any 0.5% is just not going to do it. You need to go with a full percent and make it something worth your while. It's worked in other communities. I think the electorate is aware and sensitive to what it's costing. No one wants to pay more taxes, but you also have to be willing to pay your fair share. And if we can present this as a fair share of what it costs to provide them services, then I think we'll have success with it. That's all for now.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Let's start on a positive note. I noticed a difference from last year in the city, each department really looking hard at what how you can save money for the city, and I appreciate that from all the city staff. So, thank you. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Deaton about safety and security is being of vital importance, kind of number one priority. I also feel the frustration in all the outside forces, particularly from the state, on unfunded mandates and giving us very little flexibility on what we can actually spend money on. Some of the ideas from staff, I just wanted to reiterate from their list that were provided to the council, was to improve our Shop Local campaign, and I think that was a great input. And if we can maybe work with the Sun newspaper, have a weekly column that promotes shopping locally in Seal Beach, I think that would be great. Car dealer in shops at Rossmore, a lot of people have suggested that, putting a Tesla dealer or some used car dealer at the shops at Rossmore, and each person that buys a car, the tax would come to Seal Beach. I think that was a great idea from some of the staff and some people on the fire committee, actually. Parking, there are a lot of great ideas also from staff on moving the lifeguards, that was mentioned. Charging contractors for parking, I'm not sure how feasible that is. And increasing the beach parking fee as planned once that gets approved. As far as expenses, I like the idea of closing the city hall Fridays and having it open during lunch on the other days.
Does that save, do you know?
How much was that save?
There's not really a savings that we'll experience. What we will experience is that every employee will be working on the same days and off on the same days. So when a resident comes in to talk to the community development director, interim community development director, it won't be on that particular Friday off. So we'll all have better communication and better opportunity to work together. Not really savings. Savings doesn't usually generate from closing for one day a week because there's always going to be someone who's here.
Okay.
Does that make a 410?
No, it would be at 9. Everybody would be on the 980 in the administration at City Hall. So we'd be closed.
The buildings would be closed, but the employees would be here.
No, what would happen is if this were to happen, the office would be closed every other Friday, which every other Friday is deemed, but we would be open during the lunch hour. So we would stagger lunches so that there would be actually an extra hour of service to the residents because we have 9 days now that we're open at lunch and only missing an 8-hour day on the Friday.
And then another staff members suggested an internal check before we hire a consultant, just to check internally if the city can do it themselves. I thought that was a good idea. Office supplies, I think that we're on the road to this already, but using less paper, doing the agendas electronically, and I think that just, if as much paper reduction as possible, that would save money. And on the specific items we've talked about, the council discretionary, I'm willing to, since this is such a tough year, to discuss freezing that. Less the events that we covered by the, I don't know how much the police department spends on overtime for all the events. Maybe cutting some of those events might help.
I can answer that. Actually, we did a check on that, and we went back to the last few years, and I have a study that came back, and we spend about $60,000 in overtime a year, just for those events.
One of the things that maybe, since it really isn't very late, maybe what we could do is look at each of these and vote on each of these, and then, that'll give staff more time to incorporate them. But one of the things that I was thinking about on that, we have the events in front of us that cost us that money, and I really think that should be a community discussion. I don't think the council should make that decision alone. And maybe we could set up a time and invite the community and the groups to come in and just have a discussion on, we can have this much money, whatever the council decides is a good amount, and then where are we going to spend that money? Because it's something everyone's become very accustomed to. So maybe we could vote on all of these ideas tonight, like the council discretionary.
Robin, I know it's not itemized on the agenda, and there isn't a dollar value per se on tonight's agenda. Is that something we could do tonight, or?
So since it was provided as part of the general budget summary, I would say that if there is a discussion on it, each council could provide their input. You wouldn't necessarily vote on it, but if you talk about the items, each of the council members could provide feedback to staff on the events that you're speaking of, if that makes sense.
Well, for instance, let's talk about the discretionary fund. That has to be something we all agree on.
Right, and we've received comments from Councilmember Moore that he's willing to freeze it, so that gives staff feedback on how each council member feels on that item, but we're not necessarily voting on it. Staff would come back based on the information that we have from the council, and then provide follow-up. City manager would direct staff to go ahead with your comments here tonight and follow up with a staff report or more information where you could vote at a future council meeting.
I think it has to be more formalized, is what Robin's saying.
Well, my concern is that they need to know that they've got at least 3 of us, and now we voted. So
we can receive direction on formalizing the draft budget, but we just don't have anything noted for an official vote.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll give you direction, but no vote. You want to?
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, no problem. On the League of California Cities, I agree that's a very valuable service. I was proposing to freeze it for 1 year, just because we're trying to get to a balanced budget. On the ACOC, I think we should be in ACCOC as well, but again, not this year. The tennis center, I thought we should, increase the fees to at least match the expenses. The Main Street trimming has already been recommended by staff for the 7,000, so I agree with that. And senior transportation, I think we all kind of agree that the nutrition portion of it is valuable for the seniors that go to the lunch, and that the grant covers that portion of the senior transportation. As Sandra said, since they're willing to cover some of the shopper shuttle portion, I'm okay with having Leisure World take that over. I have a little different view on the Dial-A-Ride. I think we should keep the Dial-A-Ride. However, I think it's okay to reduce the Dial-A-Ride and try out the OCTA program kind of on alternate days, and then evaluate that next year whether to keep the Dial-A-Ride or not. Because to be honest, I didn't know that we were thinking of even lowering this until recently, and I think we need to kind of talk with Leisure World and get some more feedback before cutting that completely. And so I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Mayor, could I just tag on to one thing that Councilmember Moore mentioned is the shop local. And just to let people know and remind people, on June 28th, there is a business roundtable scheduled with the Chamber of Commerce. This is the first that we're doing this, and we'll be talking about those ideas, but it will be, a meeting that we're considering with them and then adding some additional meetings, but just to get feedback originally from the business community about how we might be able to support each other better.
Okay. I forgot to say that I do support the Prop 218 as well. And I do not like taxes at all, but I think to support the number one priority of safety and security in our neighborhood, I think we do need to consider the sales tax.
Vicki, I received emails saying that businesses in Seal Beach that do not belong to the chamber will not be allowed at that roundtable. Is that a correct statement?
It is a chamber event.
It's a chamber event. Thank you.
I received that email also.
I didn't receive that email.
Want me to send it to you?
No. I just wanted to say that I agree with a lot of what was said here in the last couple of days. I really want to commend the departments and the city for really doing a gut check, so to speak, and coming up with all these alternatives and cost savings. I think, when you have a lot of money, you don't really look at what you're spending. And, I use my house cleaning, for example. When I have a lot of money, I just keep cleaning the house every week. But when things get tight, you start looking at those cuts and what you can do. And I appreciate each and every department really looking at things they can cut when times are tight, because sometimes you don't need as many things that you think you did or you had before, and you can really maximize the use of our services during certain times of the year. It's a seasonal city in a lot of respects. Cutting the tree trimming, looking at TOT. I even think looking at the illegal VRBOs is a good idea to kind of capture some of those extra costs that aren't really being obtained by the city. The senior meals, my neighbor does the Dial-A-Ride or the Meals on Wheels weekly. I go with them probably every 3 or 4 months. It's an important program. I see how the people are living in their homes, and it's a really important program. And you don't really respect that stuff until you need it. Dial-A-Ride might be a different scenario. Maybe a voucher program. We used to have tickets for the pool. Maybe they can subsidize the cost instead of paying the other company $2 one way, $2 the other way. We can charge them $3 for the round trip, but somehow be a little bit more creative with stuff like that. But all in all, I'm open to all these suggestions, and I think when times are tough, you have to be. Our residents came up with some really excellent ideas. And what I noticed on Tuesday is, and I noticed last year, is the revenues always seem to be the same or pretty close, and the expenditures keep going up. And that's kind of a hard nut to crack, because how do you get more money in? I mean, we have a lot of challenges with the internet sales, and I know it's a good excuse, but I think there's a lot of reality. I mean, I know my family does it themselves, and we try to shop as local as we can all the time, but we're all doing it. And I think, I remember a few years ago we were talking about, giving a finder's fee for big box companies, or what was the term you used? Big, small footprint and a big revenue generating. And everyone was all excited, and some people were really upset because they weren't used for that service. I think we really got to take that by the hand and all do that, not just, one consultant, if you will. Oh, if you find some, a big box company, you get a finder's fee. I think we could all kind of be involved in that. And I would really stress that we work with the chamber. I know I'll be meeting with the chamber and residents and, collectively coming together to get more foot traffic in our city. I mean, we have a great, ideal city. I mean, I think all of us love living here, and we love working here, and we just love being here. I mean, I'm here all the time. Like I said, I go to the beach at least once a week. I'm walking the streets 4 times a week, and I try to drive around all the time. So I think, I don't speak for myself, I speak for all the residents. I think we have to come together and really think outside the box and try to get these revenues up and try to collectively get together. So I'm going to make it a point to meet with the business owners and the residents and just challenge ourselves to get this done. But I think these other items, are up for discussion, and as they come forward in the next few weeks, we can definitely look at that. So thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment?
Well, I think we need to come to consensus, not vote on anything, just so that we can give staff some direction. I am willing to give up my discretionary this year. I think that will provide, if the entire council agrees, $100,000. Again, given the deficits that we are looking at, we are not looking at $477,000. At $477,000, that's already using $1.5 million of one-time monies. However, that doesn't count the police officers that we have just funded out of pool money. So now we're up to $600,000. If we continue to analyze what we need rather than what we're trying to eliminate, I think we're up to about a $2 million figure. So really what we're looking for here is about $2 million. And of course, the place we have to start before we go to our public is to cut. So I'm willing to give up my discretionary. Tom, can I borrow your list? Because you have it so nicely typed. On the senior transportation, I like Tom's idea. I think we should cut the dial-a-ride to 3 days a week and cut the hours. But I do think that we need to bridge it into the Orange County transportation and at least get it started and find out if it'll work for us or not. I would like to decide as a body how much money are we going to go into savings, because, folks, that's what we're doing if we subsidize these events. Now, Chief, you're going to have to answer this for me, but as far as I know, nobody's asked us to make St. Patty's Day a special event. It's something that happens to us. So I don't think we really have a choice on that one, do we?
No, we don't, but every year that could change in how we deploy. We can deploy less, obviously, this year.
And you know my opinion on that. I think we've been over-deployed for a number of years now. So, and of course, I know, as soon as something happens, it's my fault. I know, it's my fault.
You were under-deployed.
I know.
It'll be the first.
It'll be my fault. But we have had an awful lot of police presence out there, so.
I don't disagree with you, but I want you to know a lot of that is subsidized with mutual aid. That does not cost us anything.
I know that. I know. So maybe we could eliminate all our police officers and just get the mutual aid. I don't know. Think outside the box. Okay, so we do need to cut and I'd like to ask staff for their recommendation, how much is reasonable to cut on those special events. Because there are some things, I don't think we want to end the Christmas parade, for instance. I don't think that we want to end the car show. That certainly brings revenue to the city as well as using. So we're going to make some hard decisions, but I think what we should do is get a dollar amount from the city as to what they feel is a reasonable amount, and then call the groups in and the community in and say, okay, let's decide what we're going to do here. Maybe they'll take reduced for all of them. Maybe they'll want to eliminate an event. I don't know, but I know I don't want to make that decision on their behalf. I think we should increase the tenor center's fees. I think we should keep the league. I'm more than willing to try the revised tree trimming. The beach grooming, I'm willing to try. The janitorial, I'm still skittish on, so we'll see about that. The Main Street pressure washing is a health and safety issue, and that's really important. The Main Street tree trimming, I'm willing to take that skip of a year. And then again, yeah, but I do want to see looking at maybe reclassifying some positions. I want to keep the senior meals. I want to eliminate the shopper settle. I want to reduce the dial-a-ride. I'd like to try out the Orange County service and see how it works for us. Am I forgetting something you need direction on? I do want to go and do some revenue generating ideas. I would like staff to come back and tell us which revenue generating idea that they believe will be the best for us to get the most out of. What else do you need direction on? And then I'll pass Tom's list down. That's it. Anything else? Did I hit it all?
Tom's list.
No, not really. The only thing, I think that the one really big thing on here is the issue of less events and the city's participation in them. I don't know where you're going to cut it. I don't know how it's going to get done. But, yeah, it's got to be a work of art between both sides and see what we can come up with. The other things on this list are fine. I agree with increasing fees. I think I already mentioned that people ought to pay for what they get. I'm willing to give up my discretionary money. I think I've spent quite a bit of it these last 4 years, and I'm probably done for a while, for a long time. There are probably other things I would agree with staying in the league and giving up ACCOC. I'm really concerned about giving up these senior transportation programs, but we will need to work something out. And, the working group between Leisure World and the city will be very important to maintain, discuss, and really get some good feedback.
Sandra, did you set that group up?
Well, it was, yes, sort of.
Yeah, I think
well,
you did.
I thought that, maybe we need to sit down and talk. And we sort of started something, and it didn't really work. And now we're going to be pretty structured, I hope.
Yeah.
And meet, we don't have to meet even once a month. We can meet twice a year. Mm-hmm. And talk about issues that concern both of us and how we're going to work together.
Yeah, good work. That was a good idea.
I think I already said before that I'm in favor of maintaining senior nutrition, because I think that's important for health, also for social activity. I would be in favor of some cuts to the dial-a-ride if we can, try to maybe transfer over to the other, but maybe shorten the hours or get Leisure World to help out, to help with some cost savings. The tennis center has been even revenue in the past, and it may likely increase, but increasing the membership fees or whatever fees the fees for their activities, I think is reasonable. And I said I would be in favor of staying in the league. I am in favor of giving up my council discretionary funds. I have tried to be very careful in using them. I've planted actually landscaping on, and I'm going to be doing that very soon on Lamson, where the state has not allowed us to water the turf anymore. So the turf has been turning brown, and so it's being replaced with drought-tolerant water, which in the long term helps the city out by not having to mow that. And so actually I'm hoping for cost savings in landscaping by spending that money. So I've tried to be responsible with my money, but I will be happy to give up my discretionary money. And let's see, anything else? Beach grooming, janitorial. I think the beach bathrooms are going to be a work in progress, but to tweak it to however that works to keep things going. But doing cuts in off season is probably something that would be good to look at. And working with the community, basically just, I think our city has been very generous with helping out on the events and just being straight with them and telling them that, we're just going to have to do something else and see what happens. Okay.
Can I say one more thing about, let's see, it was revealing the staff's evaluating the staff and whether or not they need to be reduced in grade or rank or whatever. I do have a problem with that. If someone is here and doing the job and has an expectation being paid what they're being paid, they ought to be paid. And then I would agree with the philosophy of this if it would affect the person succeeding them, and that there wouldn't be a reduction in payroll until till a new person hits that spot. So that is something that I would be concerned about. Your turn.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of these things, but I think there's some really good ideas, and I'd be open to most of them, if not all of them. So.
All right. So ask the staff if they have.
So the staff will come forward with a.
I think we have enough direction the best we can tonight. Obviously, the senior transportation, we're going to need to work really closely with the county, Michael, in terms of how we can do some serious public outreach on that, especially if we're going to use that Abrazar program as an alternate if we, in fact, reduce the dial-a-ride program. And I think the best start for that conversation is we've already got a city Leisure World Working Group committee set up next month, and we can start looking at that. I think, the alternative you talked about in terms of dial-a-ride, reducing that 3 times a week and then using the county program as an alternate to supplement that, I think is a great start. But given that it does have an impact on service, I would suggest we start the conversation with that working group committee and then work closely with the county in terms of how we can do outreach to the people that really rely on that service. Special events is going to obviously be a difficult conversation, and I don't from my perspective, I don't know that we should be approaching it from a dollar amount perspective in terms, I think that if there's an opportunity for these groups that rely on this service, they can find a way to help offset the cost, like we charge other groups that have special event permits in town, like Band on the Sand, where they're actually providing for police officers and public works crews and lifeguards and that sort of thing. So I think that's obviously going to be a discussion we're going to have. I just don't know that looking at it from a financial perspective is the right way to look at it, unless we're asking these groups to come forward in order to continue hosting those events in town. They've got to help us pay for that. I think we've got direction on everything else, quite frankly. At this point in the year, a ballot measure is going to be really difficult for us to get on. We still have we do have time. It's just going to be a sprint to get there, but we'll make it happen. And as those of you know, especially council members Deaton and Massa-Lavitt, and Councilman Moore and Starsik actually have been at those meetings as well. The Fire Services Committee has made a recommendation in terms of continued fire service to our community, which does involve a potential, financial ballot measure and some other conversations, and we'll be moving that committee recommendation forward to council on June 11th to start that conversation. So in terms of whether it be a TOT or sales tax or some, other measures, that's the first point where we'll start having that conversation with you.
I just want to say that what came out of the OCFA meeting was that is our most fiscally prudent way to go. And so when we talk about we're staying with OCFA, we are staying with OCFA not only because they give us excellent service, but because they were substantially cheaper than the next best option. So I think it's really important that we realize that if we want fire and paramedic service, no matter who provides it, that we need to have some revenue generation.
So that's all the comment I have for now. Obviously, we have a short amount of time to finalize the budget in order to get it to you on June 11th, but we'll make that happen and appreciate your time. I know it's been a really long week for everyone, so appreciate that, as well as your the policy direction you've given us. I know we've given you a lot to think about, and that's because we've spent a lot of time over the last several months, as you can see, to get us to this point. So thank you for that.
Anything else? Last chance? So tonight.
Till Monday.
Till Tuesday. So we'll adjourn the city council to Monday, Tuesday. June, is that right?
Monday's a holiday.
June 11th?
Yes.
No.
Let's see.
It's the third,
May
27th.
May 29th?
Tuesday.
Let me start this all over again. We'll adjourn the city council till Tuesday, May 29th at 5:30 p.m. to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. Thank you all.
I'd like to say to the sun, I guess we're not going to carry it over till Monday. We got our work done tonight. So, thank you.